His fashion.
He wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998, if you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and it is instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Right, you're very welcome along this Thursday morning. It is Thursday the 16th of April. I had to look that one up, but it is definitely Thursday. It's definitely the 16th of April, and it's definitely about 7:30 in the morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. Here's what's coming up for you on a very busy show for you this morning. Keith Wood and George Gregan spent a good bit of time in each other's company last night on Off the Ball. We're going to play you that interview with Joe. They get into loads of different things. Keith's remembrances of what it was like to play against Australia, particularly around scrum time, just how good a player George Gregan was, and the current situation that Australian rugby finds itself in, which is pretty dire. OTB AM, we're going to start with the sports pages at 8:15 with myself and Owen bringing you through those. We'll have a special guest before that. Will O'Callaghan is coming on to apologise to the people of Offaly and the rest of the world about leaving Matt Connor off his Mount Rushmore. Best Irish goals in the Premier League as picked by Nathan Murphy. Nathan obviously in charge of the first issue that we had around Mount Rushmore, so I'm sure that list won't be in any way contentious whatsoever. That's coming your way at around about 8:25. At 8:40, our resident Monaghan man is going to join us to talk to us. Shane Hannon is going to join us to talk to us about the Monaghan Mount Rushmore, which on the face of it seems very straightforward. They have about 5 people who are any good, so 4th and 5th shouldn't be that hard to distinguish between. Classic Game Club is the second part of Tyrone and Kerry from 05, where we talk about who actually was the team of the noughties, who was the best team of the decade. Was it the team who won the most All-Irelands, or was it the team who beat them every single time they played them and ended up winning the head-to-head battle 3-0 over the course of the decade? You can, use your logic and decide that Tyrone were, of course, the team of the decade, unless you're from Kerry. And Owen makes that case very well. And then Johnny Courtenay is going to join us at around about 9:40. He runs the company which looks after big major brands in Ireland that you would know about. So New Balance and Umbro and those kinds of brands, particularly the brands that have had the Irish jersey for the last 30 years or so. So we're going to talk to him about the situation with regards to big sponsorships and how that might impact our ability to return to sport whenever we're all safe to do so. And also we'll talk about the history of the Irish jersey and a little bit more about that. We're going to start doing a bit of the impact of coronavirus on the business of sport over the next couple of weeks too. So next week we'll talk about sponsorship and how sport might survive or how it might look recalibrated after this is all over. It is 32 minutes past 7 here this morning, and it's time for us to play you what happened last night on the Wednesday Night Rugby with Keith Wood and George Gregan. Have a look.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere around the world is struggling, to say the least. But Australia, when you throw in the fires on top of everything, has been through the ringer in a big way. What a year. Yeah, it has been. It's been an incredible 12 months, but particularly through the summer period. It went from just incredible droughts. I remember Woody mentioned it earlier. We obviously caught up during Rugby World Cup. I remember doing an event with some of the Aussie farmers, and they were talking about, normally they're really positive farmers. They expect the rain, the drought will break. But they were 3.5 years into it, and it was like, we just don't know when it's going to end. And then on top of that, we had the bushfires, and then we had these ridiculous rains afterwards as well, which caused flooding. So it went from one extreme. One week, they were shutting down towns and getting people to evacuate because of the chance of fire, and then they go back into their homes because they've beaten that natural disaster and they get flooded. So it was a really crazy time. And then obviously you roll into what the world's dealing with now, but it's been an incredible 12 months. Where we live in Sydney, sometimes the visibility of all the places, Canberra, where I grew up in, that was at times the world's worst quality air. It's normally the cleanest air in the world. So that gives you an example of just how much the fires are having an impact on this country. So you said there drought for the last 3.5 years in the build-up to the fires? Yeah, it has been. It's been bone dry. It's been, and that's obviously the worst mix. You go into a drought. There's obviously a 3.5 year drought. There's a lot of fuel, which is obviously
the trees, the dry fuel, the dry shrubbery, and then you add extreme heat, which we had. Like, it was just unprecedented how hot the summers were, and then it just takes a few, which occurred. Some of them were man-made, which is really disappointing, were caused by people, but it's a terrible mix of lots of fuel, lots of extreme heat, and then the big thing was the change of winds. Like, even in Sydney, as I said, the visibility sometimes was you couldn't see past your face, so to speak, to be fair. And then the southerly would blow in from, and they would change the visibility, but it would actually change the direction of the fire. So there was no let up in the fire. There may have been let up in the visibility and the air quality, but there was no let up in the fires because of this change of wind direction, which was just causing havoc for all the fire people around our country who were just amazing what they did. It was just a relentless summer for Australia.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, I presume that has prompted a hell of a discussion around climate change. I mean, you down there, you guys seem to be at the front line of it. Yeah, it is. It's definitely caused a lot of discussion, and it causes a lot of heated debate. But the reality around the world is something's happened. You just look at for what we've just experienced over this summer period and the build up to it, and the impact it's having in other parts of the world. I went to Zambia years ago with the family in 2012 and did a few things in Livingston Rugby Club. We set up a little foundation there. Well, not a foundation, a club, literally a rugby club. You like this, footy. Hopefully get you there to do a week's coaching with the kids. You just teach them how to play rugby, tag rugby. They all play football, you teach them to play rugby, so it's quite an unusual thing to do. You get them to throw the ball backwards to run forwards. You do that instinctively when you learn the game of rugby, but if you're coaching it to kids who've never done it before, it's quite an interesting phenomenon. But they pick it up really quick because it's games and it's fun. But cutting to like why I bring Livingston and Zambia up is it's Victoria Falls. Like, it's always, even in the dry season, there's water going over. It was bone dry. Like, there's no water on the Zambezi River flowing over Victoria Falls, and that gives you a real big, visual example of how the impact of, I reckon, global warming is having. If there's no water in Victoria Falls, that's quite incredible. Yeah. Keith, you've often been on the show down the years and talked about the admiration you have for Australian rugby played at its best. So talk to us about where George Gregan fits into all that.
Yeah, he doesn't fit into it at all. What I loved with so I got my first test against Australia in '94. I think George got his first test a few weeks either before or after. I can't remember. Yeah, that's it. '94. And it wasn't just. They didn't have a huge number of players, because everybody would always go for the comparison and say, well, obviously you need to follow the All Blacks because they have got such an inherent sense of skill and they've got this conveyor belt of players that are coming through. Australia and rugby, and we'll talk about how rugby is struggling in Australia, and it is really struggling at the moment, but it's fourth or fifth sport, very similar to rugby in Ireland. So that's where the similarities are. Some of the great athletes go and play in other sports, for rugby in particular, Gaelic football. Some of the guys, you just love to take some of the greats from Gaelic football and to manoeuvre them over into a rugby backline. But it's the use they make of their players. They have a player who's a really good player. Even if he isn't in the right position, it doesn't seem to matter to Australia. They'll always get the best players onto the field, and I always liked that. There was an interchangeability about it. Now, not with George as a nine, and George was a world-class nine from pretty much the first days he started playing. But all the other players moved across the back line. So you had players played at 10 or 15 or 12, or Matt Gitto played at 9, 10 and 12. And, so suddenly you had this ability to make certain that you had players who were leaders, who could understand the game incredibly well, really good footballers, would be able to pull the rabbit out of a hat, because they got all their class players on the field. So if they had two guys, so I often thought about it, the Tony Ward and Ollie Campbell conversation that used to happen over out halves in the late 70s in Ireland, they would never have been fighting with each other. They would always have been on the same team in Australia, because they didn't want to have made certain to get the good guys on the field. And I just thought, because the amount of players that Australia had, that they were the ones that we should follow. They were smart. They played smart rugby a lot of the time. And I think partly as well to do with the Australian Institute of Sport back in that particular period of time, they were ahead of the game in an awful lot of physiological sides, and we weren't. And I thought for us, they were the ones to go and look at it. But look, I grew up, and I was fortunate to play against some of them. I grew up watching Lina and Campese, and they were just phenomenal players. Then played against them at the end of their career. But there never seemed to be a big fall off in Australia in that period of time. So they had a great team. And as soon as that great team were gone, you'd Georgie, you'd Larkham, you had Timmy Horn and Little, and there was just so many players of huge quality that just consistently came through and stayed for 10 years. They rarely had players that came and played really well for a year or 2 years. They kept them for 10 years. They seemed to get the best and exact the most out of all their top players.
George, we know the career you went on to have, and you burst on the scene with the Jeff Wilson tackle in '94. I think that was your fourth test.
Yeah, it was.
Were you hot stuff as a youngster coming through when you were 17, 18, 19? Were you earmarked to go on to great things?
I would like to be saying no. Honestly, I think I was one of those guys. I was always small, so that never changed throughout my whole life. But from about under 16s, so under 16s, you got your rep teams, under 10s through to that age bracket. I think it's everywhere. And from about under 15s, I struggled to make starting rep teams. I'd make the squad, but I wasn't the starting halfback. I started playing halfback from about under 14s, but up until then I was a fly half, so I was playing number 10. And so I enjoyed it, but I was probably, to be fair, at that stage of my life, I was really focused on cricket. I just love cricket. I actually had a podcast the other day with a guy called Shane Lee, who played Australia in Test cricket, but also one days. He won a World Cup in '99. And his brother's Brett Lee, who was a wonderful fast bowler for our country, and I used to play against him at that age, that's under 16s through to under 19s. And my big focus was cricket. I wanted to sort of try and, become an Australian cricketer and play with the likes of Ricky Ponting and the Adam Gilchrist. But when I played against them, I realised I was never going to be that calibre. They were so good. But I played rugby as well because it was a winter sport. And then I always thought, well, maybe I wasn't big enough, or maybe I wasn't. Maybe I just didn't get the opportunity that I would have liked, but I still loved the game of rugby. And then when I left school, I went to my local club, and then, you're playing a bit of Colts, which was under 19s, under 20s at that stage. We had a good year, had a fun year. Like, we had a good time off the field, and we ended up winning the competition, so it was kind of nice. And then before you know it, you sort of I got offered a scholarship, not for cricket, but for rugby union when I was about 18 or 19, and that's probably when I started thinking, hang on, I should take this seriously, because not many people are getting scholarships, particularly out of Canberra. And I got a chance living in Canberra. The Australian Institute of Sport was in Canberra, so I got the best access to all those facilities, the best coaching. I really applied myself, which is what I had to do to give it a crack, because that's probably what I was trying to do with cricket, but it ended up being rugby, which I love. I always loved rugby, but someone saw something in me, and before you know it, you get an opportunity. You're playing sevens in '93, '94. I'm making Australian sevens team. I go to Hong Kong in '94. Bob Dwyer sees something in me at the Hong Kong sevens, but Glenn Ell was my coach, and Glenn Ell was the backs coach for the Wallabies in that period. So someone takes a punt on a youngster. I think we've all had it. It would have been the same with Woody. He may have been a star from the time he was probably 12, I reckon. but I definitely was more focused on cricket at that stage in my career. It's quite funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Funny, I'm just laughing. I started scrum half and out half, and it's where I played until I was 16, and didn't play a huge amount in school. Actually, I stopped because I was so small, and only started back again at 16 or 17. And when all those representative things kind of go to happen in school, we had Munster schools trials and Ireland schools trials when I was 16, 17, but I was playing hurling for Clare instead. And that was the end of my hurling, as it turned out. And I only really started, and I loved rugby in school, and I loved it in the last year of school. But it's when you start afterwards. So I joined again, Colts, under 19s, under 20s, playing for Gary Owen. And my first coach was Paddy Reid, who had won the Grand Slam in 1948 with a 40-year ban for playing rugby union. He was my first coach. And it is about finding somebody who says he's got something a little bit different. Let's pick him. Let's give him a start and see what happens.
Yeah, that's it.
George, if we draw a line to start with from, say, 94 through to 99, you come on the scene, you know, the Jeff Wilson tackle is a nice way to announce yourself. You get the 95 World Cup thrown in there, which is historic and iconic and memorable for all sorts of reasons. And then you go and win the World Cup in 99 under Rod McQueen. You must be thinking to yourself, this is pretty sweet, isn't it? Is it always going to be like this? This is amazing stuff. That's kind of a magical introduction to national rugby.
It was a magical start, to be fair. Like I was on the bench for 2 games against Ireland in '94 when Woody played, and then I got my start playing against Italy, and then we played Samoa after we played Ireland, and then obviously my 4th test was the All Blacks, and then the next time that the following year it's World Cup in South Africa. We're playing the first game against the hosts, and they end up becoming the world champions. But we lose that game. We went in as very strong favourites, because the team had won in 1991. So I was part of a wonderful team. You mentioned some of the names, Tim Horans, Jason Littles, Rob McQueen, Rob McCalls. You had Ewan McKenzie. Gosh, you had Campo. It was such an amazing team who'd won in 91. And there was still a core of those guys in that squad. And there's some young players coming through, like the Matt Burks. There was like Scott Bowen, myself, Daniel Herbert, Joe Ross. But we failed in that World Cup. So we went from hero to zero very quickly. You learn that really quickly. You learn that in sport. But I hadn't lost a test until that first game in Cape Town. So I think I played 6 test matches with the Wallabies or whatever, and we'd won every single test match. So that was my first loss. And it was a terrible feeling, but that was the reality of my start. It was probably too good a start. Like, sport brings you back to reality really quickly. And then between 95 and 99, it sounds like everything tracked really well. We got our bums kicked a heap of times, that Wallaby team. I remember the All Blacks were like a little toy doll for them as a cat, like a kitten playing with a toy doll or something. That's what we were from about 96, 97. We were on and off against the Springboks. We could beat them at home, but we couldn't beat them away. And we were very inconsistent. And then Rod McQueen came in at the end of 1997. We went on a tour to Argentina. I think we'd lost a test match there for the first time since 1970-something, and we were the worst Wallaby team ever since then. And to think from that moment to 99, November, we become world champions. It does, if you look at it, just looking at the stats, it looks as though it was a pretty smooth ride. We actually went through some hard times. I remember being on the end of like a 40-point hiding against the Springboks in Pretoria, and that was in 1997. So no, there was a lot of learnings. There's a lot of dark moments for that team, but we came through. The strength of that squad was we were quick learners, and we cared for each other, and we worked hard. Good coaching from Rob McQueen and coaches around, but really drove the leaders to drive the team, and Woody knows all about that. He's been part of some very successful teams, and that's really, really important. And then a crux of that team stayed together post that 99 campaign. So we'd had some bad times, but you have to do that to enjoy the good times. Otherwise, it's not as enjoyable, it's not as rewarding. But that was reality. Yeah.
I've seen you talk about what McQueen brought to the setup or the secret to that World Cup win, the win against France in the final ultimately, and you used the phrase consistency of thought. You might explain what that means in that Australian context. Yeah,
we spoke about that a lot. I think, it would be interesting to hear Woody, because he was part of, I thought that Lions team in 2001, I watched them in 1997. They definitely were another great team which inspired us as well in terms of being able to take your game away from home. I think if you want to be a great team, you can be a good team, but if you want to be a great team, you've got to be able to take your game away from where you're comfortable, and more often than not, you're comfortable in your own backyard. So if you can win away from where you're comfortable, then you're well and truly on the path to being a very, very good team, potentially a great team. And you have to be consistent. And that consistency of thought, I think, provides consistency of action, consistency of your habit. Does it guarantee success? No, it doesn't. But I tell you what, you're going to be in the wrestle more often than not. And that was, I think, what that team was. We won a lot of test matches in that period by very narrow margins. It wasn't necessarily because we were more highly skilled or better prepared or whatever it was, but we were very consistent in terms of how we trained and were prepared for those moments, and we look forward to them. I think that's another thing. I want to hear that from Woody too, because I think you look forward to those pressure moments because that's what it's all about. And that was definitely the hallmark of the success of that team, was very consistent in how we went about those moments and how we prepared for them.
I found playing against that particular Australia team, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, I played a few tests and lost all of them, apart from the first Lions test in 2001. I've never felt as much pressure in a game as I did in those games because I felt I'm not saying that you knew everything that we knew, but ye seemed to be a step ahead an awful lot of the time. From in the forwards perspective, you didn't have a good scrummaging pack. I mean, you were a poor scrummaging pack, but you were magnificent cheaters in the scrum. Your ability to drop a scrum and tie your shoelaces is kind of like a throwback to
clean the boots.
You know, it was like, but it was amazing because you'd get hammered in the scrum and then for some very strange reason, you'd get totally on the top in one or two scrums in the whole game. It was as if you knew you could only focus on a couple. But in the lineouts for me, I found it was horrendous. With Ealesy in the second row, and a lot of the time not being lifted at all. He would jump on his own. So you'd lift the other two guys at the front and the back, and you're like threading a needle to try and find your window. I like psychologically, for me, that was where I.
Richard's rugger thing. On Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Yes, well, let's forget the political circus. The big talking point this week is the rugger, of which I am a mega fan. And, of course, Ireland taking on England in the Triple Crown rugger match in Twickenham in what promises to be an absolute belter of a humdinger. And central to that fixture is the Andy Farrell story, the bearded, teak-tough rough diamond from Lancashire. Yes, Lancashire, which is, of course, as they say locally, up north. It's up north, like that. That's how they say it, up north. Yes, he played for England. He coached England. He played rugger league as well for Great Britain. He coached the British and Irish Lions. He now coaches Ireland. He's young enough to be his son's brother, who also happens to be the captain of England. I mean, go figure. And we thought Brexit was complex. Yes, humour there. Well, with me to delve a little deeper into this particular tale is former Ireland coach Eddie O'Sullivan. Eddie, this presumably adds a little spice to the occasion on Saturday.
Yeah, well, it's actually Sunday, Pat.
No, today's not Sunday, Eddie. No.
No, the match is on Sunday.
Oh, then you should say will be. It will be on Sunday. Future tense, Eddie. Grammar. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot riding on this for both teams. Ireland could win the Triple Crown by beating England. To keep their unbeaten run, which would probably more than likely ruin England's chances in the championship. But England are at home, which is ultimately, big advantage in the Six Nations. I suppose sometimes, you're looking all around the house for your favourite pair of socks, and you look down at your feet and you realise you're wearing them,
Yes, of course. There are all sorts of minor prizes within the championships, aren't there? There's the Calcutta Cup, the Triple Crown, the Millennium Trophy, and, of course, the wooden spoon. I mean, it's a bit silly, really. I mean, who in the right mind would want to win the wooden spoon?
Well, no, that's because when you come last in the Six Nations, you're given the wooden spoon. So I suppose it's like a spoon of shame, really, I suppose. You can't fire a cannon from a canoe.
Yes, as I said, a little silly. Anyway, back to the Farrell saga. They're both called Faz, aren't they? The Faz. Which Faz do you think will add the fizz in order to win, Eddie?
Well, it's hard to say. Two very evenly matched sides. You can't tell how ripe a banana is by looking at a kumquat. Sometimes you got to spread the butter before your toast is done.
Yes, well, it might be an idea for Andy Faz to tell his Irish players to attack England out wide and attempt to score tries. Not sure if he's thought of that particular angle. Anyway, finally, a quick prediction from Ronan O'Gara, or Raj, as he likes to be known. Almost out of time, Raj, but can Ireland do it against England in Twickenham? Raj?
They can,
but can they?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rog. Anyway, thanks for that. Very much looking forward to the weekend of sport that lies ahead. A thought just struck me on the Brexit theme is that if England get beaten by Ireland, they will actually be out of Europe. They'll be leaving the Six Nations. So it's similar to an exit, isn't it? It'd be like an exit, because England obviously begins with E, so it'll be an EXIT as opposed to a Brexit, which is, of course, what Britain did, exiting Europe. So, yes, an interesting tie-in there, I suppose, when you think about it, in a way, isn't it?
Fuck's sake.
Yes.
Richard's rugger thing.
On Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.
OTB
AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB.
Off the Couch, live every day at lunchtime across the Off the Ball channels. While we're all staying at home, we want to help you get your daily exercise in. We're bringing you sporting experts with tips and workouts suitable to do at home.
Exercise is not defined to strict parameters. Once you get sweaty and out of breath, it works.
You might be stuck in the house, but let's keep moving and get off the couch.
You can use your couch to elevate your feet if you're lying on your back.
Off the Couch, Off the Ball's new lunchtime fitness program. You can get it on all our social channels and offtheball.com every day from 1 p.m.
OTB.
OTB
AM.
Right, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you've missed a good chunk of the George Gregan and Keith Wood special feature that we did on Wednesday Night Rugby last night with Joe on Off the Ball. That full thing is available wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to the OTB Rugby stream, or of course you can subscribe to highlights as well. Both of them are festooned with good stuff for your earballs. It's 7:56 on Thursday, the 16th of April. Time does still matter, apparently. Owen Sheehan, good morning to you. How you doing?
Very well, Ger. What's the crack?
Well, obviously, later on today, we're going to finalise and finish the Team of the Decade debate, where the rest of the world comes to realise that, of course, Tyrone were the best team of the noughties, and you are on an island proclaiming that it's Kerry. That's coming your way at around about 9 o'clock this morning. Are you feeling pumped about that? Do you feel it in any way, you know, you've had a Damascene conversion overnight?
And I don't really know what you're trying to get at. Like, the whole point of this Team of the Decade talk is obviously just to wind me up, which is fine. Obviously, I get the sort of poke the bear.
No, factually, establishing the fact
that you tend to get. Like, I'm sure that, like, if you're at the zoo, you like to see the tiger do the dance and stuff like that. I'm sure you kind of relate it to Tiger King, sure. You know, actually, let's capture these circus animals and laugh at them. That's what this whole Team of the Decade chat is for you, and that's fine. You know, we're in the entertainment business, but I'm in the information business, and the information that I have is that Kerry won 5 All-Irelands, Tyrone won 3 in that decade.
Can I just say, Tiger King, because of the hype, was disappointing, but our debate, despite the hype about who was the Team of the Decade, will not disappoint. That's my hot take of the morning.
Well, you actually had to call in a mate.
7:57.
It's like when you don't feel you're big enough to bully that kid, you actually get another kid to help you bully him, and you got a bigger kid in Tommy Rooney to come help you bully me. So that's fine. That's fine if that's the way you wanted to play it. But but good thing I've got a lot of moxie and I could stand up for myself.
Okay, if debating is bullying, then I understand that, you know, that's where we are. And let's us join together now and do a little bit of that as well. Owen, I'm going to take this opportunity to welcome Will O'Callaghan to the show. Regular viewers, and I think the whole of the internet at this point knows that we're going county by county to establish who should be on the Mount Rushmore of sport in each county. Mayo was a cluster because of Nathan forgetting about the guy who won like 1 million gold medals in the Olympics, and so therefore that one is already being refashioned. There was some debate about the Cork one, which was fair enough. I mean, Cork people are angry, so that's okay. That was always going to happen, irrespective of who Colin Buig put on the list. And then Will O'Callaghan was on, and there appears to have been an administrative error about who was going up on Cron Hill. Is that am I getting that right this time, Will?
That's the plan, yeah. Look, at this point, Jared, we haven't got the chisels out at the Rock just yet, so I think it's time for us to make an ever so slight change to what we did about 47 hours ago when we made this selection. Because
who did you who were the 4 people that you put on, and who was the one person that was left off? So let's just go through this. There is a correction here because, and this is not us being Spurs or Liverpool and responding to public pressure. This is just an administrative oversight on our part / your part, Will. I mean, it sounds to me a little bit like you were in awe of your lecturer. He said you were a good student at the end, very close to the end. He was buttering you up, and you were like, I can't hear anything after that. He said I was a good student. I hope you got it first. That's all I'll say. I hope he told you you were a good student at the time. 20 years later is not much use to you. But anyway, what happened, Will?
Well, basically what happened is we were picking our final 4. I think in the nature of a live broadcast, we got a bit caught up in the idea of trying to get 5 heads onto our Mount Rushmore as opposed to 4. Effectively, what the committee has told me is that we had the right to change one of the initial 4 that I had submitted. So the 4 people that I submitted originally were Pat Smullen, who we changed for Susan Moran. We had Brian Wheelahan. We also had Shane Lowry. No dispute over those 2 picks. And then the other pick that I had was Matt Connor as my Gaelic footballer. And effectively what we did, we switched to Martin Furlong, which was the suggestion that Paul had made earlier. I kind of thought at the time we were happy enough. We'd have 2 from each and everyone went home happy and people could discuss it rationally afterwards. And what we have found probably in the last 2 days or so is that Offaly people are pretty stubborn. And we saw this in 1998 after the game was blown up early against Clare and we had a sit-down protest. And subsequently, I think a lot of Offaly people have taken a similar line of thought on this. And as opposed to us having a nuanced discussion online, which is often not possible, people have decided Matt Connor has to be on this Mount Rushmore. There is no question that Matt Connor has to be on there. And in fairness, I think I spoke to Paul Rouse for a good while after we did the discussion on the show a couple of days ago, and I think there was an acceptance that it's an absolute coin flip between Martin Furlong and Matt Connor. And us putting Matt Connor on now is not a case of us just responding entirely to that backlash. As you say, Ger, it's a case of us kind of taking a look at things, taking a look at the way we did the process of picking the 4. And I personally feel that you can't have an Offaly Mount Rushmore without Matt Connor. He was my first suggestion on Tuesday, and I thought at the time when we were having the discussion he was absolutely nailed on to be on there. And I know Paul Rouse has no problem, and I don't think any Offaly person would have any problem with Matt Connor being on there. Shane Lowry even kind of jokingly said on Twitter that he'd be willing to give up his spot to put Matt Connor on if necessary.
Don't think that was a joke.
I don't think it was a joke.
No, I think he was probably half serious. And I know we definitely got a tweet in from someone who worked in Furlong's bar in New York as well, and they said Martin would happily swap his place to allow Matt Connor to be on the list as well. So I think what was very important, and what I was kind of saying to people when I was responding to them, I think debate was very important on the back of the discussion we had on Tuesday as well, is that I don't think this is anything against Martin Furlong. I think Martin Furlong is absolutely deserving of his place on there. He was on the long list, which I put out when we put them up originally, and he would definitely be among my top, very few Offaly people at the top who are deserving to be on here. So I don't think this is any reflection on the guy who won 3 All-Ireland medals, the Stephen Cluxton of his day, Footballer of the Year back in 1982, up until this year, the only footballer who played in goal to ever be selected. You can see Cormac McCormack's post there about the fact that Martin Furlong would probably be happy enough. And David Farrell, his comment underneath, reporter with the Offaly Topic for many years, saying it loses any credibility without Matt Connor, was probably reflected by a lot of people who were in contact with me over the last couple of days. And it's an awful pity that the Donlan debate that you guys had on OTBAM previously probably led to Paul Rouse not being on Twitter, because Paul Rouse would have probably been taking a lot of the flack that was directed my way, because I was tagged in every single off the ball tweet, which is putting up the off the ball.
No. You can't be throwing your former lecturer under the bus like that, Will. I'm sorry. You're backing out. You're backing out. You didn't stand your ground at the time, and you're backing out now. And no, I'm not having that. You made a mistake. It's okay. We all make mistakes. I mean, obviously,
exactly. We've corrected the mistake before we went too far in it as well. So now I think our final 4 at this stage we're happy to settle on will be Susan Moran, Shane Lowry, who you can see in the tweet there at the moment, and you see the sit-down protest suggestion in front of Cronhill as well. And then the other 2 we're going to put on are Brian Whelan and Matt Connor.
Right, well, I look forward to having this debate at some point in a pub in Offaly with a live audience when we're allowed to do that again, and we'll try and get somebody to make that case. But you're like, one thing is that like this isn't as clear-cut as everybody's saying, because the highlight reels always show how amazing Matt Connor was, but if you have eyewitness reportage from a historian who says this was Footballer of the Year from a goalkeeper, like, bear in mind how difficult that has been ever since for anybody to reach that level. And obviously, makes a key save in an All-Ireland final that leads to them winning the match. Like, these things, this wasn't just a mistake. It was like there was a proper case made, and it was much closer than it would seem to be in people's minds.
Well, absolutely. There's no way it'd be outrageous to think that Martin Furlong would be ranked among the top 4 Offaly sports people of all time. Like, quite aside from what he did in 1982, the fact that he was part of the All-Ireland winning teams in the 70s as well, those back-to-back champions, was also part of the minor team who won the All-Ireland Championship back in 1964. So, like, Martin Furlong has just his legacy written all over Offaly's success at All-Ireland Senior Football Championship level. And the fact that he played for the county team for almost 20 years as well gives him a huge shout in all this. Coming from a big sporting family as well, his brother would have played as a kicker briefly in the NFL as well. That just gives you an impression. He was also involved in the split in Tullamore GA club as well, which Paul, I guess, neglected to mention last week as well. And there have been a few jokes of people saying that Paul was maybe going for a Tullamore bias in terms of some of his picks. But hey, this is the whole point of us having the discussion
and
on
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
He said that as well, yeah, in fairness to him.
Yeah, he did. No, he absolutely admitted that. And look, again, I think it's a good thing for people to be able to debate this out. I think, in fairness, we joked at the start about, sit-down protests and so on. But I think everyone has been very reasonable in terms of what they said. And one thing that everyone has kind of stressed, they've not said this is anything against Martin Furlong. It's just, I think, very much the popular vote among people at the moment is that you cannot have an Offaly list without Matt Connor being on there.
Can I just say that my dad rarely gets in touch about things that happen on the show, but he did get in touch about why there was no Matt Connor. And also, I expected there to be like some sort of 2 days on these Mount Rushmores. I expected perhaps Dublin to go into potentially 3 days, Cork potentially to be a 2-dayer, Kerry, Galway, Donegal could have been a 2. I did not expect Offaly to be the day that we would actually do 2 days on. So congratulations, Will. You managed to get that spotlight.
You make it sound like it was we were trying to do so. Look, again, we are a county, and I will defend it to the end with a fantastic sporting heritage. And hopefully the discussion we've had over the last couple of days, some people who've DM'd me and messaged me over the last few days have said, hey, I wasn't aware that Offaly had such a sporting heritage. A lot of people said, hey, I had no idea that one of the best female basketball players in Irish history came from Offaly. Other people said, hey, I didn't know that Pat Smullen was actually from Offaly. No. So again, those kind of discussions have maybe opened that up a bit for people to have a think about, people from counties that maybe they weren't all that aware of beforehand.
Yeah, no, hidden depths of some counties. And also, we're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel with other counties. I'm thinking of your Westmeaths, your Laois, your Carlows, that kind of... Those ones that surround Kildare, obviously, are the worst. But anyway, Will, you've recanted from this with good grace. The Furlongs have responded with good grace as well. We've corrected the administrative error. We're going to move on. This wasn't shitposting, by the way. This was just a complete oversight, and Will not standing his ground because he was flattered by Paul Rice's attention. Thanks very much for rejoining us this morning, Will. Enjoy the rest of your day. And
cheers, lads.
We're going to continue with the show because we obviously are having another one coming up this afternoon. I have lost track of time. It is this morning.
AM.
In about 40 minutes, Shane Hannon is going to run through the Monaghan one, and he's put his long list up. There was some minor quibbles about various people not being on it, so we're going to get his thoughts on that in just a few minutes' time. All right, apologies for completely losing track of time. It's 7 minutes past 8 here this morning. The Premier League clubs are to hold another conference call tomorrow, with a growing number of clubs understood to be keen to get the season finished in some form by June 30th. There are obviously concerns about contractual issues which run until the 30th of June around players and some commercial deals if the season is extended beyond that. We'll talk about that with Johnny Courtenay a little bit later on. One of the brands that he would be associated with are New Balance, who obviously are losing the Liverpool deal at the end of this season. So what will happen with them? There are still 92 games to be played. If a safe way was found of playing matches behind closed doors, a resumption would have to take place by the 6th of June to fulfil the deadline of the 30th of June. Scottish clubs obviously voted to end the Scottish Professional Football League season outside the top flight with immediate effect. That means Dundee United have been crowned champions of the Championship, Raith Rovers and Cove Rangers winning their respective divisions, and the announcement comes after Dundee reversed an earlier vote. The SPFL will now launch a task force who will look at the possibility of extending the Premiership next season. In boxing, Deontay Wilder says he's recovering from surgery to his biceps that followed his February defeat to Tyson Fury. 34-year-old American Wilder surrendered the WBC heavyweight title to Fury following a 7th-round stoppage in Las Vegas. The pair are due to meet for a third time later this year in October at the earliest. I actually think this is good news for the build-up to the fight, Owen, the fact that Wilder was injured. When the injury happened, who knows? Whether or not it had any material impact on the outcome of the fight, who knows? But what it's going to allow Wilder to do is say, hey man, I was injured, that fight wasn't me in my reality, and it's going to allow the rest of us to buy into a little bit of hype around what should actually be something that we're all looking forward to.
I've never heard anybody have to get surgery in their bicep before. It's like quite a specific thing. I guess you have to be carrying a lot of bicep weight for you to sustain an injury that deserves surgery there. Maybe he injured his bicep by having to hold up that metal costume that he was wearing going into the ring. Maybe that is the entire explanation.
You know the way we were like laughing about it's a real thing, right? It's like you're carrying 3 stone of weight and you're walking around and it's like, oh, I'm a bit knackered now. Oh God, I got to fight that guy. Oh my God, he's a giant. Would that not? Is there no? There's no. You're not letting any room in there for that.
Well, no. I think you make a fair point, but it is totally on you. Like, to be using it as an excuse, I think, is what I would have thought most people had an issue with. It's like, why are you making excuses about something that you can control that most people actually don't even consider? People just don't even put that sort of weight on their body. So why on earth would you do this thing? And it's really stupid. It's like America's like it's definitely one of the more silly excuses I've heard after a big sports event.
What?
And like fair enough, if like even David Hay I thought was actually more understandable in his toe excuse, because at least that was an accident. This was not an accident. You didn't accidentally find yourself under a ton of metal.
What are the odds on him being carried into the ring? Is it strong odds on that he's carried into the ring the next time? I would say that he is absolutely going to get carried into the ring and gently placed into it by like a team of people.
Yeah, possibly on like one of those.
That's
chairs.
what I'm getting done if I'm him. 10 minutes past 8 this morning here. 087 918 180 is the number to WhatsApp us on. You can use Twitter @OffTheBall. You can use the hashtag OTBAM. You can just leave a comment in the YouTube stream that a lot of you are watching on this morning. Here's what's coming up for you. We've obviously going to get into the sports pages right now. The best Irish goals as picked by Nathan Murphy, who has just appointed himself the creator of lists of best things that we're all going to try and shoot down, because obviously, as I said, he ruined the first Mount Rushmore that we did. That's coming your way around about 25 past 8. We're doing Mount Rushmore from Monaghan at 8:40. Where in Monaghan would this be was kind of the other thing that I'm not sure Shane had considered just yet. He was talking about some drumlins. You got an answer?
Yeah, there's obviously one very famous hill in Monaghan, and it is the hill up to Clonus, up to St. Tiernax Park. So maybe just actually spray paint them on the road on that hill on the way up to the pitch in Clonus.
If you spray paint stuff, though, people can come along and rub it out and vandalise it and move on. The point
it's only Monaghan, it doesn't matter.
Oof. Classic Game Club at 9 o'clock. As I said, we settled the fact that Tyrone were in fact the team of the decade in the noughties, with their 3 successive victories against Kerry, who never beat them in the championship for an entire decade and yet claimed to be the team of the decade. That's coming your way. Tyrone-Kerry 05, really enjoyed that. And then Johnny Courtenay is going to join us at 9:40. We'll talk about the impact of coronavirus on sponsorship deals that teams have had, and also look back a bit on the history of the Irish jersey as well. Tommy is saying there's Rossmore Park, Mount Rushmore. So Tommy is effectively a Monaghan man, even though he claims to be from Meath, because I think his garden is in Monaghan.
In Cavan, no?
What?
It's not. It's in Cavan, no?
Is it? Oh, all right.
Listen to the accent. It's a Cavan accent, essentially, is what he's got. Anybody, any fans of the Crappy Quiz out there will, and anybody who's listening to the Classic Game Club later on, you can hear that Cavan tilt as he stands up for his Ulster brethren in the team of the decade conversation.
I have a confession to make, Owen. I can't really tell the difference between that part of Meath, Monaghan and Cavan. They're kind of all the same to me.
They may as well just congregate them and make one less shy county.
Well, I mean, can you imagine how good that team would be? Like if you were to redraw county boundaries, and
it would be savage. Yeah, it would be unbelievable. Imagine that. So you'd have like Donald Keoghan and Conor McManus in the same team.
All those warring factions brought together, like an old tribal chieftain finally emerging from. Tommy Rooney would obviously be the man that we'd be appointing as our tribal chieftain. Better to control your enemy than what was Gus Fring's line? And anyway.
Well, actually, just on that. Sorry, I know we're under pressure. This explains everything. Mayo people feel sour about Meath's success in 1996. Who was the man who actually allowed Meath to prance forward and win the All-Ireland that year? Where was he from? He was from Monaghan, of course, Pat McEnany. So maybe there is something to this that we have already touched on that maybe is true. Maybe there is a secret faction being brought together behind the scenes here, these three counties.
Home in Meath, garden in Cavan, school in Monaghan for 13 years. He's a mongrel, he says, of course, born in the States. Him, De Valera and Ronan O'Gara all swanning around in their American passports. Let's 8:14. Let's bring you the sports pages this morning.
OTB AM.
Going to start with offtheball.com. If Kerry win that final, then they're the team of the decade. Absolute fact. Dropping facts on you on the homepage of offtheball.com this morning. A great picture of Dara O'Shea and Sean Kavanagh in action from the 2005 All-Ireland final. That podcast went on a bit longer than we thought it was going to be. 74 minutes of goodness talking about what was, in essence, a brilliant game. Some of the things that we're talking about there. Deontay Wilder reveals bicep surgery following Fury defeat. You were magnificent cheaters in the scrum. Keith Wood talking about playing Australia. I didn't realise himself and Gregan started essentially at the exact same time in 1994. And a great interview with Ken Doherty last night talking about his Champions League memories. Ken Doherty in the 99 Champions League final almost forgot his passport and almost didn't make it to the new camp for Manchester United's bit of history.
The Irish Independent this morning leads with Clark urging League of Ireland players to use mental health services. So this is the St. Pat's goalkeeper Brendan Clark urging players suffering on account of COVID-19 crisis to avail of the mental health services after a survey highlighted the fears of footballers here. So almost 2/3 of professional footballers in Ireland are now worried about their future in the sport, according to a survey by World Players Union FIFPro. Then we've also got the story from Michael Burney. Clubs must be prioritised when crisis is over, says the CPA. This is Mihal Braiodi, who's been saying that the GEA now have a massive opportunity to reconnect at community level by devoting a significant window of time for club games when action resumes. He expects a completely different calendar to be drawn up on the back of tomorrow's special congress, which of course is taking place.
They also have an amazing picture there. Peter Bonetti is attended to by Chelsea's physio after being injured by Mick Jones of Leeds in the hard-fought FA Cup final replay of 1970. The Telegraph have actually gone and had the 1970 FA Cup final replay relitigated by David Oliver, the referee.
Michael
Oliver. Good point. And so he said he would have sent off 11 players. I think that might come up with John Giles on tonight's Thursday Night Football. On to the Examiner for you here this morning, and the Examiner's lead story is Cooney backs positive responsible GAA to face up to virus challenge. That's Christy Cooney, ex-president of the GAA, and Flav left frustrated by extended waiting game. So that's Cork footballer Kevin Flav that they're talking about there. Kelly felt elated after vote paved way for soccer and rugby at Croke Park. 15 years ago today that Rule 42 was amended at the GAA's 2005 annual Congress. And there's a story there about Liam Dunn talking about the Gary Kirby incident. Liam Dunn's talking about the fact that it kind of spilled out afterwards and it has become something he's become synonymous with. But he wrote about it in his book. Like, it seems to me if you write about something in your book and then people remind you about the thing that you wrote about in your book, that's just the way that life has to be, right?
Yeah, like if you're gonna make a few bob off telling those stories, you are stuck with those stories for life. Now, I know sometimes with some of these books, an excellent ghostwriter can perhaps push you into publishing things that you didn't want to publish in the first place. But that's what makes a good book, and that's what's going to make you the extra cash. So, them's the rules. I think it's fair to say. The Irish Times this morning, I might move on, leads with Australia's cash-strapped sport pushing for a restart. So this is Rugby League and Aussie rules, both hoping to resume in the next few months. Jerry Thornley, meanwhile, is writing about domestic rugby here. Pro 14 chief, and I really confident of season finale. Dave Hannigan is writing about Bernard Dillon, the jockey from Kerry who had it all and lost it all. Great piece by him this morning talking about Dillon and his wife. He refers to them as the Posh and Becks of the time. Sport could resume in empty arenas. US disease expert Fauci, this is Anthony Fauci, who's been speaking about sport in the United States, and he is now saying that there could be behind closed doors games in the United States before the end of the year. Obviously, the well-publicised fears from the States over the course of last weekend were that is a ludicrous idea and we are getting way too far ahead of ourselves. And like every aspect of this, and like every country with a bunch of experts around the world, there does seem to be varying degrees of confidence about this and varying degrees of happiness about the idea that sport could come back this summer. But he's certainly on the side of things that we could see something behind closed doors pretty soon. Like it could be the NBA playing behind closed doors on the Bahamas, for example.
Well, okay, so you fly everybody in the same. So the idea would be the same as the Premier League's idea of having everybody in hotels in the Midlands and then meeting at venues and playing those games for the NBA. That's not the worst idea. One of the other ideas was to have a team in quarantine for a period of time, and then you go to a city and play 7 nights or 10 nights. So you completely recalibrate the game schedule, and so it's the Lakers versus the Celtics for 10 nights in LA, for example, 10 successive nights. Could you do that? Is that I know? Work with me here on the teams, and
well, I would say that they're in a very good position actually to just go straight to the playoffs. I would have thought. You have a huge game. They're 65 games into the season. They've got another 17 to play. I would say that if you're in their position, you just take the top 8 teams in each conference and you cut out 16 teams in total, go straight to the playoffs, set up those matchups. But home court advantage is just not a thing. And you do have a super setup somewhere in Vegas or somewhere like the Bahamas.
Yeah.
The Bahamas is definitely strengthened by the fact that it is surrounded by water. Sports people can do less stupid things when they are surrounded by a body. Well, actually, no, that's not true. They could definitely do more stupid things, but there's like a beach right there. But they could be perhaps less contagious, and there could be less sort of Kyle Walker-esque sex parties, for example, that would have a danger of infecting bordering countries and bordering states if they did it on an island, for example. So it's ludicrous, but it's possible.
Yeah, okay. There was some story about the Scottish football team in the 1978 World Cup that involved a boat and one of their best players being sent home for something that happened after a few drinks, I think, which is probably worth digging out for people who might know that story. If anybody wants to give it us in the comments. Streets taught us how to play ball. So the Herald are doing this great series about where Dublin's best footballers come from. Something we should probably bear in mind for when it comes to doing Dublin and the Mount Rushmore. But so today they're doing Crumlin, Drimnagh and Kimmage, and it's good. It's a good selection of players. So Enda Stevens, Kevin Moran, Niall Quinn and Andy Reid are the ones they've done there. So there's a few more as well. So Jibby O'Neill all the way back, Joey O'Brien, Enda Stevens, Andy Reid, Tony Dunn, Paul McGrath at times, and a few others are mentioned in that as well. So that's a great feature that they're running as well. The Mirror's next, I think.
Yeah, D-Day is their headline. Clubs want campaign cut short if they can't play all their games by June 30th to stop anarchy in summer. Anarchy in relation to contracts, really, that it might just save everybody a lot of hassle, even if they just have to cancel this whole thing and not have to play this season after June 30th. You've got You'll Never Walk Alone, King Kenny's tribute to the 96, of course, the anniversary yesterday. GPA assure all players about grant payments. County players have been assured they will receive their 2019 government grant payments within the next 2 weeks, which could be key cash for some players. And Sané closing in on cut price £75 million buy and switch. If you're sitting on a lot of cash at the moment, you will get a bit of value for it. But all clubs are losing money. But you'd imagine the likes of your Bayern Munich, the likes of your Manchester City will probably be the ones that profit more than everybody else.
Yeah, so that's 75 million down from 145 million. So, and you'd have to say that is a snip. Next up is the Sun. The one that we have there is Flip Us Into Man City. This is Chino Esprilla talking about the new Newcastle owners hoping that Saudi Arabia's cash can turn them into Manchester City, which is kind of like, okay, that's all that really matters here, not where the cash is coming from. Guns threat. Arsenal hope to force their players into a climb down over the coronavirus pay row. So obviously they declined an offer to defer 30% of their wages. They're offering to defer 30% of their wages for a year as opposed to a pay cut, which is what the club want them to do. So that row is brewing. And AWB, a star on the box for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. The gloves are off in the fight against coronavirus. In an exclusive Sunsport interview, the kind-hearted Manchester United star tells how he has been doing his bit during the pandemic. And he's funding PPE supplies for the Democratic Republic of Congo, his family's homeland. He's also been packing the boxes as well. So there's definitely two types of footballers. There's the ones who are getting on board and helping, and then there are the ones who are having the sex parties and crashing their Range Rovers.
The Irish Daily Star this morning leads with get Prem finished by June 30th with a picture there. Pep Guardiola celebrating at last year's Premier League trophy. Clubs issue deadline for end of delayed season. Harrington is unsure, meanwhile. Europe captain Padraig Harrington has admitted the golf schedule is up in the air and the Ryder Cup could still be played as the first event back in September. Meanwhile, Shamrock Rovers management staff and players are set for a 25% cut in their wages as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to cut deep into Irish sport. And Kenny salutes fallen friends, as I've already mentioned. That is the Irish Daily Star this morning.
The Star. Next up is the Mail. And the Mail ultimatum. Premier League clubs want season finished by June 30th. Deadline top of agenda meeting tomorrow. Fears extension will lead to legal minefield. And a picture of CJ Stander full steam ahead for 2023. CJ Stander at last year's World Cup, where Ireland were deemed to have a soft draw. World Rugby last night vowed to continue with plans to stage the pool draw for the 2023 World Cup in November, despite the rugby season being on indefinite hiatus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is interesting, isn't it? Because this will actually have an impact. This will have an impact on world ranking. Where are we ranked at the moment? Are we fourth or something? We can't be fourth.
Yes, we are. No, I think we are because we had got our. Oh, sorry, that was pre-England. Before the England game, we were definitely fourth. Because we'd got ourselves back into that position. Is that World Cup draw still going to take place? Is that World Cup draw still going to take place without the Six Nations happening this year?
Well, if it takes place in November and there's no matches before them, which is very possible, then happy days. We can completely experiment for the next 3 years. I mean,
brilliant. That worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, finally, a silver
I
lining.
feel so much better about everything. Thank God. Happy days.
Rob Kearney's doing the rounds in the media as well at the moment. Leinster, in fairness to them, have come up with a campaign to raise money for 3 different charities. They have 2 charities of their own. One's an MS charity, one is a Down syndrome charity, and then the other one is Feed the Heroes. And they're all shaving or growing beards, shaving their heads or growing beards. And there's a GoFundMe which they've set up to try and raise, I think, 10 or 15 grand, and they're well on the way to doing that as well. So Rob Kearney with a full beard and shaved head doesn't really look like Rob Kearney.
No, he really doesn't.
That picture is not in the paper. It's on their GoFundMe page, so I should have mentioned that a little bit earlier for you. What's next?
We've got The Guardian next, leading with the Newcastle story. Amnesty calls Newcastle a PR tool, but bidders confidence. Premier League clubs could vote to end season in June, writes Nick Ames. And the picture there is of Nick Sagan, I think. Peter Sagan, I should say. Light at the end of the tunnel. Riders hail plan to save this year's Tour de France after Grand Départ is pushed back to 29th of August. Some worrying voices as well, worried voices on that, talking about how that could just be a cocktail for another outbreak of COVID-19 were that to go ahead, with all the moving from town to town in France. So we'll see if that actually happens. And home is where the art is. Starts to play new television tournament during lockdown. Woo-hoo. Full unadulterated coverage coming your way on OTB AM on that over the coming weeks.
Woo-hoo. I can take a few days off. So 0879 180 180 180 180 180 180 is the number on WhatsApp if you want to get in touch with us this morning. And the only other thing that we didn't talk about was Owen Farrell is going to defer around 90% of his salary to stay with Saracens, which is very impressive from him, and that's going to be over the next 5 months. Now let's move on, because Nathan Murphy has once again broken the internet by dictating to us which are the 10 best goals ever scored by Irish players in the Premier League. And fair play to you, Nathan, you know, taking one for the team, I believe. Shitposting is how they refer to this kind of thing, right?
At what stage did the boredom just become too much for me during the lockdown? I think last weekend was the answer. So
what's the genesis of this? It was one of those lists that hasn't been done that you felt we needed to do?
Exactly that. I was watching the Manchester United-Arsenal game, the tunnel match at Highbury, and John O'Shea obviously pops up right at the end with that brilliant goal, just dinking it in, the celebration of shock or trying to be Eric Cantona, didn't quite pull it off, and I thought, I wonder what's the best goal an Irish player has ever scored in the Premier League, because that one, in terms of what it meant and in terms of context, was right up there. So I went on a bit of a deep dive. I watched as many goals as I possibly could, and I eventually managed to whittle it down to 10 after quite a lot of stress, quite a few late nights, and I have stumbled upon what I'm very sure is the definitive list. I will not be on tomorrow morning, Ger, trying to change this list just because somebody more intelligent than me forced me to change it at the time.
So context is important. Explain to us what are your criteria?
Personal opinion is the number one criteria here, Ger. The context is always difficult when it comes to great goals, because Diego Maradona's goal against England at the World Cup is the greatest goal of all time. because of the context. So other people have scored similar goals where they've ran from inside their own half, but that was in a game of such importance and of everything else that happened. It feels that the context of that sort of differentiates it. Whereas this context was somewhat important, but I think just pure skill level and pure brilliance, because like some of the goals that didn't make it in, if we were going on context, was so Stephen Hunt, you might remember, scored this brilliant goal for Wolves last minute of the season pretty much to keep them in the Premier League. Ball comes from just on the edge of the area and he curls this exquisite left-footed shot into the top corner. And I was really trying to figure out, should I put that in because of its importance, to be able to do that under such pressure when it meant so much to so many people. But I just couldn't put it in. Likewise, Aaron Connolly, remember his second goal against Spurs? First ever Premier League start. Duff-esque, gets it out on the left-hand side, cuts in, brilliant finish. Again, not quite there. So there was a lot of personal opinion. There was a lot of like team goals. It was more of an individual thing. I think I watched every goal Damien Duff has scored in the Premier League, desperately trying to find one that I could put in. And like, he's finished off some of the great team goals when he was with Chelsea in those couple of seasons under Mourinho. Like the amount of flowing counterattacks that he finishes off. But individually, I'm not quite sure there was one that stood out. So ultimately, it was personal opinion. There's a lot of long-range efforts, which I would have preferred not to have had. Like another goal I left out was Shane Long, you might remember, for West Brom.
Go on, tell me.
A couple of years ago, the ball, I think it was a Monday Night Football, ball long, hoofed ball forward about 50 yards, comes over his shoulder. The most exquisite control you've ever seen. Takes it down, steps inside, left-footed, finish. So that's another one that was close. I saw a goal from Seamus Coleman was put straight back up yesterday when I put it again. You click on the account and it's an Everton supporter giving you abuse because Seamus Coleman isn't on it. But I'm fairly confident standing over my list.
Okay, do you want to talk us through your list here?
Yeah, so number 10, Jeff Hendrick. Has a bit of both. Has the skill level you would want with the control. This is for Burnley against Bournemouth. This is December 2016. He's first season in the Premier League. It's just a few months after Euro 2016. We think this is the guy who's going to drive us forward for Ireland for the next few years, and sort of showed here all the ability he has. Close control, and then this volley straight into the top corner from about 25 yards out.
Next is Ian Hart.
Quality finish. Ian Hart, free kicks are always difficult.
Why are free kicks are excellent? Like he's the best purveyor of a left-footed free kick that we've seen in the Premier League. Like his free kick record stands comparison with almost anybody in the history of world football.
Yeah, and this one was the pick of the bunch because it was obviously Leeds, Manchester United at a time when Leeds, I think this was the season they were just starting to have a little bit of a decline. They were 4-1 down when he scored this goal. Everyone should remember it. The sun is shining, live on Sky, and he's almost 30 yards out. Dennis Irwin scored a brilliant free kick for Manchester United as well, but I think Hart's one was better, maybe because it's just, again, it's Manchester United, adds a little bit more context to it.
I mean, I think the fact that it's against Man United or the fact that it's against a title rival should absolutely elevate these things. Well, let's keep going here because...
Number 8, John O'Shea, the goal we've just spoken about.
This is very low down.
One of the greatest Premier League games of all time. And it's a weird one. I'm not a Manchester United supporter, but I remember watching this at the time and having this weird sense of pride that one of us in one of the great games had popped up and scored this goal. Sort of like in the 70s and 80s when all our dads went from being a Liverpool supporter to an Arsenal supporter to a Manchester United supporter, depending on which of them had the most Irish players at the time, that John O'Shea could do this.
This is the thing in beauty.
So that's number 8.
So this is all on offtheball.com. I should tell everybody we've helpfully, so you don't have to YouTube them all. Nathan's already done that for you. Number 7 is Robbie Keane for Liverpool against Arsenal. He's on the list twice, as you'd expect.
It could have been on it 3 or 4 times. There was one goal left off against Chelsea, you might remember, where the ball just sort of pops up to him about 25 yards out. It's the last minute of the game to the win 4-3, and he just whacks it in top corner. That was very close to getting on the list. This is, obviously, his time at Liverpool was a bit of a disaster. This was the moment where you thought maybe it was all going to turn around. Again, just a long ball forward over his shoulder, and the ability to hit it first time on the volley as it's bouncing on the run, I think thoroughly deserves its place on the list at number 7.
Yeah, I actually think it's better than the one you've gone for him later on. But anyway, Stephen Carr, Spurs against Manchester United again. Against Manchester United, feels like it should be higher up. This is the Manchester United treble winning team of 1999.
Yeah, just an absolute rocket right foot, smack, top corner.
Thunder
You ain't gonna
bastards.
Stop that. He scored another brilliant goal that I was very tempted to put in when he was with Birmingham. Similar style, runs up the right wing, just head down, tears past everybody, and then chips the keeper, almost Cantona-like, chips the keeper. But the more you watch it, the more it looks like it's a cross, because he sort of throws his hands up into the air as he kicks the ball in I've miskicked this, and it just dinks over the top of the keeper into the top corner. But this is one of those goals you always remember. Again,
it's not
unstoppable against Manchester United.
It's not schmeichelling goals.
A lot of goals against Manchester United.
It's not schmeichelling goals, which is probably diminishes it a tiny bit for me. The next goal is way too far down the list. This is
why? Because it's Aston Villa.
No, because it's a beautiful piece of. It has everything. It's a team goal. It has Paul McGrath in it for a start, so that's super bonus points. I mean, the fact that it is Villa, but it's also it's a proper title decider against a team. So everything is on the line in this game.
And it is past Peter Schmeichel as well.
It's Steve Staunton. It's peak. It's one of the peak Man United teams. It's their first peak, and Paul McGrath with a beautiful bit of skill on the right wing.
If you watch the 5 minutes leading into this goal, Villa are all over them. United cannot get out of their own half. It's like watching Liverpool at times this season, where they've just suffocated the opposition, and Paul McGrath goes on this marauding run up the right-hand side, cross in, head it clear, keep recycling possession, and eventually it comes to Stan, who started the move at the very beginning when United have been on the attack, playing this brilliant 1-2 up the left-hand side, comes to him, almost at the angle on the left-hand side of the penalty area, and it's just such a beautiful outside of the boot, bending shot. Like, Schmeichel is at full stretch, and he's just reaching for air because he cannot get near it.
It was a Sunday afternoon lunchtime kickoff. I remember going out to the golf club to watch it with my dad, and it finishes 1-1, and you're like, this might actually happen for Villa. And then things got derailed pretty quickly afterwards. But I actually think context matters. So next it's Sunderland against Wigan Athletic.
There's never been more context to a game than Sunderland against Wigan Athletic. Daryl Murphy. This started lower on the list again because of the context side of things, but then you just keep watching it and go, dear God. Yeah, it's an unbelievable strike.
It's a great strike, but, you know, context matters. Steve Staunton's is a great strike against Peter Schmeichel. Who is the Wigan goalkeeper here?
Well, I think Kevin Kilbane may be on the Wigan team.
Kevin Kilbane might be the left back up against him, giving him all that space, ushering him inside onto his left foot to shoot. Yeah, I've seen you in training, Murphy. You're not going to score this.
That was a massive regret of his. Yeah, it's just a wonder goal. It's an incredible strike. So I think it definitely deserves its place on the list.
It deserves its place on the list. It should be further down. Stephen Ireland, Manchester City against Reading. I mean, it's a great goal, but it's like, come on, it's against Reading for Man City.
It's the 93rd minute. It's pretty much the last kick of the game, and again, it's the technique, how he gets his foot up so high to smash this volley into the top corner. And this is Stephen Ireland, 21. We thought this guy, it's November 2007. This is the dream. Like, this guy is going to guide us to European Championship World Cup for the next decade. But again, I think because of the timing of the goal, like match winner, last kick of the game.
Against Reading.
And just technique.
At home.
But I don't think there's, I don't think there's many other players on the list who could have scored that goal.
But Steve Staunton scores his at Old Trafford in a title decider. John O'Shea scores his to win a game in like a massive game. This is
O'Shea's the winner here. O'Shea, like, it's the if we're going to use the Maradona logic, like
we're not just using the Maradona logic, is what I'm saying.
We're using Nathan's own personal matrix.
Exactly.
How did it make him feel? Feel when he watched it?
You can't put a price on that.
Number two.
Number two, Stephen Reid. Blackburn against Wigan. Again against Wigan. December 2005. 189 kilometres per hour they somehow managed to work out is how fast the ball went. The ball just pops up to him 25, 30 yards out. He's running at full speed. Like, this is Stephen Reid. I think it was his best season, probably with Blackburn. He played pretty much every game. He's coming at full power and whack. Like, it's unstoppable.
Do you remember a shot against Cameroon off the bench? That's kind of what that reminds me of. And Jesus, again, another career that would have been absolutely sensational if it just hadn't been for injuries, because he could actually kick the ball from the halfway line fairly accurately. And so number one, I think, is very disappointing. It's Robbie Keane against Blackburn Rovers, and it's a good Robbie Keane goal, but it's just a little bit cheeky, and it's grand compared to some of the other goals I've seen him score.
Well, pick the goals that are ahead of this, because so my criteria for this was nobody else on the list could have scored this goal. It's genius. The close control, the little flick over the top of Robbie Savage's head, back onto his right foot, checks in on his left, and then just smashes it into the back of the net. It is a brilliant, brilliant goal.
It's an excellent goal, right? But I actually think the Liverpool goal was more aesthetically pleasing. He kind of scuffs the shot. It's not smashed in. It's like horrific defending and...
It's horrific defending because he's made them look like idiots.
Right, okay.
With his brilliance.
I actually don't... I don't know. Is there not an amazing goal that he scores for Coventry? Is it not against Arsenal? Is it not an amazing Robbie Keane goal for Coventry against Arsenal?
Not as good as that.
I'm pretty sure there is. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
I think I know the one you're talking
Robbie
about.
Keane, Coventry.
While you're looking up that, like Nathan, you said a John O'Shea goal made you proud to feel Irish, even though you're not a Manchester United fan. How does that not constitute a number one spot if we're using the How I Feel matrix?
That's just one part of the matrix. It's a matrix own. There's many parts of the matrix.
Right,
I have to ignore my personal feelings at a certain stage and go with just the skill on show.
What has the response been like?
Well, the response...
Robbie Keane against Arsenal, what a goal! I've just seen it. And this is the Arsenal team with Perez and Lundberg.
Whatever.
And Tony Adams. He's up against Tony Adams and Keown. He's like a 17-year-old.
Is this Stephen's Day 99?
Oh, he's running away from goal and he hooks it with his right foot, opposite direction, Seaman, full length. That's one of the best goals I've ever seen. It's not even his best goal, Nathan. It's not even his third best goal. No. I'm not having that. That is the best goal that Robbie Keane has ever scored. He scored it for Coventry. You're exactly right. Nobody else on this team in Irish football could have scored this goal, where he's running away from the goal and hooks it perfectly into the one spot against the Invincibles. Like
here.
What?
Here.
No.
Coventry 3, Arsenal 2. It's a winner.
No, that's 3 years before the Invincibles.
Sorry. It's the other team. It's the better team.
It is an unbelievable goal. It is an absolutely unbelievable goal. He should use his left foot there, but he uses his right and somehow manages to direct that into the opposite corner.
You've screwed it up again, Nathan. Congratulations. That's twice in 2 weeks. Well done.
Speaking of Arsenal, John Giles is picking his all-time Arsenal 11 on the show tonight. I had a conversation with him yesterday, and you start thinking of your all-time Arsenal 11, automatically in your midfield you've got Overmars, Perez, Vieira and Petit.
Liam Brady. Liam Brady. Got to have Liam Brady today. Right, we got to go. More controversy coming your way, and as far as Nathan's telling us, from 7 o'clock tonight on Off the Ball on News Talk. Right, let's move on, because we have Monaghan's Mount Rushmore standing by. Before we get to there, as a Virgin Media TV customer, you can now enjoy classic weekends of sport packed with some of the most memorable wins, losses, triumphs and upsets, all on Virgin Media Sport. To mark that, Irish snooker legend and Manchester United fanatic Ken Doherty joined Joe on last night's Off the Ball to chat about his experiences around the 1999 Champions League final. Have a look.
Surely this has to be Barcelona '99. It never got better than that, and it never will.
No, never got better than that. And the backstory to that was I was travelling to meet some of my Manchester United pals and supporters at the supporters club. I had to fly Dublin to Gatwick, and it was back those years where when you were flying to England, you didn't need your passport. Even it's only 90 or 99. You didn't need your passport. And of course, I've been travelling back and forth to England all the time. I'd forgotten my passport. I landed in Gatwick, and before we landed in Gatwick, the pilot says, "If you're travelling on, I hope you have your passports and all." And I realised I'd no pass. I left my passport behind. And luckily enough, I informed Aer Lingus. I got my brother to drive out to the airport to give to the Aer Lingus desk, and a stewardess took it on the next available flight. But of course, I missed my connection flight to Barcelona before the final, so I missed out on the night before the final. But thankfully, and thanks to Aer Lingus, that the stewardess was very, very good to take the passport and bring it across, and I eventually got the next flight the next day. So I was lucky in a way to be there, but at the same time, to witness that at the atmosphere and everything and the build-up, it would have been great to be there the night before because with so many Manchester United fans and were going over to the game, but I missed out on that, unfortunately. But it was still great to be there, of course, for the match itself.
And the thing, like, even for younger listeners, like, they're routinely seeing Premier League teams competing in the latter stages of European competition now and winning it, But for this was post the European ban on English sides. United generally were winning the league, so they were generally in Europe. And it was like this, the 90s were an odyssey. So many, a semi-final defeat here and there, and it was building and building and building. And you were starting to wonder, would Alex Ferguson and United get over the line? And that was part of what makes that night, I think, for United fans who lived through the 90s in particular, so incredible.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of us were too young to remember, of course, 68, but we've seen a lot of the footage of, and that was the sort of holy grail for Alex Ferguson. And, he sort of came close, a few semi-finals before that, but to get over the might of the likes of the Bayerns and the Real Madrids and all the, the Barcelonas, they were always just that little bit ahead of Manchester United. And we saw, but I mean, and even through that season, I mean, they'd had such a long season, winning the league, winning the FA Cup as well, so many matches. But it just, they just, the stars aligned for them. There's no doubt about it. They were on a great run, and they hadn't got their talisman, of course, Roy Keane. They didn't have Paul Scholes, who had been such a great servant and played so well that season as well. They didn't have those two players in the squad. So, like, going into that match, I mean, the fans had hope and great expectation, but they knew the might of Bayern at the same time as well.
Great stuff there from Ken Doherty talking about the 1999 Champions League final. And let's move on. It's time for us to chisel out in granite forever the Mount Rushmore of Monaghan sports people, and none better than Shane Hannon to come on and tell us who should be here. Shane, good morning to you. You didn't sleep a wink last night?
Good morning, lads. No, it's a nerve-wracking thing picking four players from your county, but I do have a couple of bones to pick with both yourself, Ger, and with Owen. There's been a lot of Monaghan people probably viewing this show this morning, and there's been a few things said that I think we would all take a little bit of exception to. So it's only Monaghan, it doesn't matter, was one thing. The thing that hurt me most, combine Monaghan and Cavan into one less shite county. That really...
And Meath.
And Meath as well.
North Meath.
Just North Meath. Jerry, you also made the point that, Monaghan isn't a tough county to choose. We only have 4 or 5 sports people. I'm of the opinion Monaghan is probably the most talented county in terms of sports people per capita. We have
the per capita thing is something we always forget, because everybody forgets that Monaghan has about 12 people in it.
Is the phrase per capita going to get chiselled out onto the Mount Rushmore? That should be one of the things.
Possibly. Listen, Owen, we welcomed you to Clonus for that David Clifford Day in 2018. We welcomed you to McNeilo's pub in Inniskeen for the National League as well. And then you turn around and say we should join in with Cav, and it hurts. It hurts deep. I mean, we took you to Spy nightclub, in fact, in Monaghan town as well.
What?
So I don't know if you'll be welcome back, Owen. This is some serious accusations being hurled.
I'll tell you, Spy nightclub combined with David Clifford's last second goal did literally almost kill me. I'm pretty sure I'm still recovering from that heart attack.
Yeah. No, it's a tough county to picture. I think it's more difficult than people make out. I mean, I left a couple of people, as you said, out of my long list that I put on offtheball.com yesterday. It's not an easy county to pick, and I actually learned a couple of things about a few sports people, men and women, that I hadn't realised as well over the last 100 years or so. There's a couple of people along the Martin Sheridan lines in Mayo, like Jer's or Nathan's pick, that he left out of his team ultimately. But this Monaghan team is far from easy. And in terms of where we put it, Owen, you mentioned the hill in Clonus. Clonus already has their sporting memorabilia. They have the John Delaney Park, of course, where Clonus Town play their football. So that's already in Clonus. So we'll have to put it out. Mully Ash is a hill outside Blaney. Mount Rushmore, of course, that Tommy mentioned. But I think this is going to be in the Bragan Mountains in Slieve Bay, just overlooking Fermanagh and Tyrone. I think it's a perfect spot for that. You can actually see it from my house as well. It's about 20 kilometres away or so. So I think it's perfect. Overlooks the northern counties.
Can I just say, on a per capita thing, this is actually important. The population, according to the census in 2016, was 61,386. Which is amazingly small when you consider that the population of Monaghan add the population of Cavan, which is 76,000, is still fewer than the amount of people who live in Louth, the wee county. I mean, so 76,000 live in Cavan and 61. So you'd get, what's that, 6, 13, you get 138,000. That'd be a good team if you mix Cavan and Monaghan together, wouldn't it? It'd be a great team. You could win All Ireland.
It's a recipe for disaster. You can't mix Monaghan and Cavan, people. I mean, it's akin to me suggesting to Owen to mix Cork in with Kerry, or Jared for Dublin to join hands with Kildare. It would make you sick at the very thought of it.
Oh, Kildare and Dublin have done that a long time ago, Shane.
The accents are the exact same anyway. But
well, only up the north of the county. That's we in the south believe ourselves to be the true Kildare. I mean, I'm going to stop on that one and just before I walk myself into any more trouble. Who have you got? We're going to give us our first two, which I think are fairly straightforward, right?
Yeah, the first two were obvious. The other two were the ones that gave me the sleepless nights over the last couple of days. But I'm going to have to kick off with an MEVL man, Tommy Bowe. A fairly obvious choice, you would assume. I mean, he's done it all, really. Obviously, Ulster, the Lions, Ireland. He's had an extraordinary career. Of course, played that massive part in the 2009 Grand Slam, the first in many years for Ireland, 61 years, I think it was. Scored that try, of course, outpaced Shane Williams. How many people can say they've done that? But Tommy had a serious background in other sports as well. He ran with Glasgow Harriers, a local athletics club here in Monaghan. He played Gaelic football with MEVL growing up. He was, in fact, a county player up to minor level as well. So if things had gone a little bit differently, we could have seen Tommy Bowe in a full forward line with Conor McManus for Monaghan. But look, this is the way it worked out. He made his international debut in 2004 against the USA. That was an autumn international. He scored a try that day. First Monaghan person to have a cap for Ireland since the 1920s. I mean, he's really done it all. He's had a serious career. Obviously, he's got into the media now himself as well. He's got his clothes brands. He's got his shoe brands. A fairly obvious choice, and I think not a lot of people would argue with Tommy Bowe being on the Monaghan's Mount Rushmore. In fact, I interviewed him for a college newspaper in UCD, the University Observer, a number of years back. We met in Castle Leslie Estate in Glasgow, where Paul McCartney got married, in fact. A very famous estate. But he sat down, did an interview, bought me a coffee. I still owe him a coffee, in fact. But he's a lovely guy, such a down-to-earth fella. We've had him off the ball, of course, multiple times. But
this is the vote from the Monaghan Tourist Board coming to you from Castle Leslie, where you can also get a nice, fine rock star wedding if you want one. And there are other beauty spots around the county that we can get into in the coming moments. Look, OK, I think everybody can agree on that. Before we get to the next one, I want to welcome Grania McElwain, a sports broadcaster. Good morning to you, Grania. How are you getting on?
Really good, Jar. How are you keeping?
Pretty good. I think Tommy Bowe is a shoe-in. I think our next one is going to be a shoe-in as well. So that's Barry McGuigan. Why should Barry McGuigan be on... I mean, there's a case Barry McGuigan is kind of in the conversation for the Irish one. But anyway, from a Monaghan perspective, Grania, how important is Barry McGuigan in the mythology of Monaghan sport?
He's huge, Ger, and I think, well, two things. He's got a park named after him, which is one thing. But another thing, he's a song written about him, like the Clonus by Clone. How many people have songs written about them and sung by Big Tom? So that was a big criteria when you're going through it. But I think for Barry as well, I mean, when I was picking these people, it was a really difficult choice. But for me, it was like the impact also that they've had on the area. And he's had a massive impact in the area. Like when he was winning fights in the 1980s, it's against a backdrop of real troubles in Northern Ireland. And in Ulster, it was huge to have someone from both communities that everyone expected, that everyone wanted to see him fight and support. So I think from that background, Barry just appealed to so many people across the board. And when you look at what he achieved, I think he's, 32 wins, 28 of them knockout. He represented both sides of the community, as I mentioned. He was at the Olympic Games, he was at the Commonwealth Games. And then that fight in 1985 against Eusebia Petroza. I mean, you had everybody, not only in Clones and Mon and Ulster, but also everybody supporting him winning that. And I suppose on a personal level for me, in 1985, like I was a child of the 80s, so I was actually at that homecoming when he came back to Clones, which was phenomenal. Just seeing the people, the celebrations, and he was somebody that you knew. And on a personal story as well, both my dad and my uncle Eugene, Seamus, my dad and uncle Eugene, they played music with Barry's father, Paddy. So they would have been at all the fights with them, particularly my uncle Eugene, and would have supported Barry and Paddy through all that. So I think for a community, he brought such such hope, such pride. It was just a phenomenal time to be that, and he definitely, for me, deserves his place in the Mount Rushmore.
100%. I think that fight, like it's kind of hard for people now to appreciate the fact that the whole country was sitting watching this on TV, and all of the UK was sitting watching it on TV because it was on terrestrial television, and he was in a football stadium, an Irish fighter in a football stadium. It was in Loftus Road, and you're like, I mean, you know, that's kind of level of boxing that Amir Khan and various other people haven't actually reached. You know, Anthony Joshua has got there. That's the kind of level of celebrity that Barry McGuigan had in the 80s when there was nothing. When there was like, well, I lived in a house with 2 channels, and this guy was coming in with his brilliant smile, and his dad was singing in the ring. That's my memories of his dad singing in the ring.
Exactly, and Danny Boy, and it just, I suppose, because we knew him, like you would go to Clonus, his mum owned a shop in Clonus, and so they were actually so accessible. Like it's hard to believe that you actually could meet these people. Like I remember my dad was getting a haircut. His girlfriend at the time, who turned out to be his wife Sandra, and my dad had brought, and she was cutting his hair, and Barry just walked in. You know, that level of, I suppose, meeting your idols. You know, you get autographs and walk up to people and get them. So it was just a different time. But I think it was just the era as well, Ger. Like it was just, you know, in Monaghan as well, and Clonus in particular really suffered with the troubles too. You know, and it's between Monaghan and if you're going through Cavan and you're going through the north as well. So I mean, it just gave such people a lift at the time in the 80s and doing that. And then when Monaghan GA was going so well as well in 1985, they went on to win another title that year too. So I mean, it was just a huge proud moment to be from Monaghan and to be involved, and it's a memory that everybody who was there remembers and appreciates what he achieved.
Yeah, not only is he on our Mount Rushmore, but that's immediately onto our imaginary list of 30 for 30s that we would do the summer of 1985 in Clonus and what it was actually like. Because I think our next debate is going to be about who of the footballers is going to represent Monaghan, and there's a couple of different nominations here. Shane, do you want to give us who you think should be on it?
Yeah, football-wise, this was quite tough. I mean, we can't ignore, obviously, the ladies' team of the 1990s. They had 5 straight All-Ireland finals. They won 2 of those. Probably should have won more, in fact. But there was a serious depth of talent in that women's team in the 90s, and they really put Monaghan ladies football on the map, by all accounts. Brenda McInespy is one who viewers of Lake Regale and TG Carr recently would have seen, and she has an extraordinary story. She played an All-Ireland final while she was 14 weeks pregnant, I think it was, with one of her kids. She ended up playing football with 2 of her daughters for Emmy Vale when they won the All-Ireland Intermediate Club in 2008. I mean, she had an extraordinary career, 3 All-Stars herself, and a really interesting background. I mean, she's such a longevity to her career as well. She's a sister-in-law to Aidan McInespy, of course, the namesake of the Boston GAA club, who was shot dead in Auchtercloy on the Tyrone-Monaghan border during the Troubles. But an extraordinary woman, an extraordinary person, and was very close to my team, but she's not the person from that Monaghan ladies 1990s team that's made the cut. Jenny Greenan is the next name on the list. It's hard to leave her out when you look at her number of All-Stars alone. 7 All-Stars over the course of that period. You know, she was on those teams that won those All-Irelands against Laois and Waterford in 96 and 97. She was on the TG Cahir team of the decade in the noughties as well. Made her debut for Monaghan in 1991. That was against Longford. She was 14 years of age. I mean, she's Monaghan's answer to Cora Staunton by all accounts. Cora has 11 All-Stars, of course, but, you know, 7 isn't too far behind. She had an extraordinary career. You know, 1 All-Ireland junior medal to add to those 2 senior ones. 5 national leagues, you know, county and Ulster club honours. She won 2 of her 6 All-Irelands. She'll probably be disappointed herself that she didn't win more. She's an Ahabog club woman from Monaghan as well. So it kind of geographically spreads around the love of our Mount Rushmore in Monaghan. We have Ahabog, we had Clonus and Barry McGuigan, and we have Emmy Vale, which is a North Monaghan for Tommy Bowe. So I think she's well deserving. There's Niamh Kinlan, Del Byrne, a number of other names from that women's team that could have made the cut, to be honest with you. But it was imperative that we had someone from that team on the list. And I don't know what Grania would think, but for me, Jenny Greenan has to be on the list.
Grania, I think you might be trending towards Brenda McInespy. Is that right?
Yeah, I would be going towards Brenda McInespy, but just to say that I'm from Scottstown as well. So on the list, I know them at the beginning of the conversation, there's a couple of people that I thought really should have been on that list too, which was Ira Theron Comanuk Cascale, Sean McCaig, who has had a phenomenal achievement as a manager with Monaghan. Ulster titles and National Football League as well. Also Porrick Duffy, who is Arch Stewart as well, and Ray McCarn, who was a footballer from Scottstown who started playing football at 16 and ended up winning 2 Ulster titles and an All-Star as well. But in terms of the next pick, yeah, Brenda McInnesby stood out for me. And the reason being, and I totally toyed with Jenny Green, and like Niamh Kinlan is another person, and Edel Byrne that really stood out for me as well from those sides. But for Brenda, like Monaghan Ladies GA wasn't set up until 1991. And Brenda McInnesby was there from the beginning. And I think she showed an awful lot of women and young girls how they could manage it all, how they can play football, how they can have kids, how they can work. I think she's been a true icon, true inspiration and pioneer for women's football throughout the ages. I mean, her dedication, you know, she was just so driven as a player and played everywhere on the pitch. And even being pregnant, she took the decision, well, you know what, I have two families. I have obviously my family that I love more than anything else, but I also have the GEA family as well. And she always kind of was thinking of other people above herself. So for me, she definitely is someone that I think should be on Mount Rushmore for what she's achieved and what she continues to do. Like, you know, when I talk about pride of place, like this is a woman that constantly gives back to her. Like you'll meet her at any match doing either the jerseys or, you know, liaison offers or anything at all, that she's always at every single game, like did stints as Piro as well. And her children have that love from the GA. Like, you know, Ryan McInnesby obviously been mentioned, but all her daughters have played for Monaghan. You've Kieran Aoife, who Kieran All-Stars in her own right to play for Monaghan. Emer Nashing coming on as well. So I think they've just a phenomenal family. And I think for Brenda, she's just the heartbeat of Monaghan Ladies GAA.
So one of them played in utero and then went on to play for the county as a senior. That's pretty impressive. I think.
Yeah.
That's a fairly unique achievement. And I think probably merits a place on Mount Rushmore. I understand the case you're making, Shane, here, but this is a tough decision. And ultimately, you know, you're going to have to go with Courtenay here, I think, right?
Yeah, look, it's akin to the Offaly situation with Matt Connor and Martin Furlong. Both can make very well-deserving cases, to be honest. Totally understand the Brenda McInnesby argument. I mean, you can't just look at this as a numbers thing alone and All-Stars. Jenny Greenan's impact on Monaghan football cannot be underestimated, nor can Brenda McInnesby's. Perhaps, as Grania said, you know, her longevity, the fact that she was so involved in coaching as well. She played for so long, and you know, Ryan, her son, is a star player in the Monaghan panel at the moment, the senior men's panel. So, an extraordinary talent. And if you watch that Lake Regale documentary, you really are left with a feeling of someone who just really loves Gaelic games and has clearly passed on that love to her family. So, look, I'm not going to disagree with Grania. We have to find a happy balance here, and quite happy to put Brenda McInnesby on the Monaghan-man Rushmore.
So we have an agreement for 3, and we're not allowing any administrative errors here. Who is number 4, Shane?
For me, number 4 was a direct toss-up between 2 Gaelic footballers. So obviously we're quite a strong Gaelic football tradition county. It was Nudie Hughes or Conor McManus. So it depends what area you're going for. McManus, for me, walks into any current team across the country. He's an extraordinary player. I saw a point that the greatest score I saw in person was a point he scored against Tyrone in Omagh in the Ulster quarter-final back in, I think it was 2018. So from the sideline, he just popped it over like it was nothing. And he does that every game he plays almost. So it's hard to ignore McManus. And look, Nudie Hughes of his own era was extraordinary as well. 3 All-Stars, Monaghan's first All-Star, in fact, in 1979. The first player, in fact, in the country to get All-Stars in both defence and attack. He was a corner-back when he won his first All-Star, and then for his following 2, he was a corner-forward. So they clearly realised he can actually shoot and started playing him higher up the pitch. But, you know, Nudie's an extraordinary man as well. He grew up in a family of 7 boys and 7 girls on York Street in Castleblaney, a Castleblaney Fogs legend. You know, Owen will remember that great Kerry's team of the 80s, or even from watching videos back. And, you know, Monaghan lost an All-Ireland semi-final replay to Kerry in 1985. And that was a serious chance for Monaghan to go on and win their All-Ireland. Of course, we haven't won one yet, but hopefully that will happen. Banty's back and all that. But, you know, Nudie has an extraordinary career. 2 Ulster clubs with Blaney as well. He does a bit of colour commentary as well now with Northern Sound Radio, the local radio station here. So he's still involved with Monaghan football and calling those games. Scored the winning goal in the Ulster final in 1988 against Tyrone. He was man of the match. He scored 1-3. And he scored an incredible point in that game I mentioned against Kerry in 85. You know, he routinely did things that seemed impossible. And look, Mount Rushmore is for dead presidents. And, you know, Conor McManus is still alive and well and playing. Nudie's retired. So you'd have to maybe argue that on that basis alone that Nudie Hughes gets etched into this Monaghan Mount Rushmore, and perhaps in the future when Conor McManus hangs up his boots and he's taken home Monaghan's first ever All Ireland, we'll scratch out Nudie's face and man.
It's very violent.
It's only rock.
Poor Nudie.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they might blow it up. A WhatsApp from Roy Larmer from this morning to 0879 180 180. I woke up feeling like it was championship morning, lads. He's a Monaghan man, so there's no live sport on, but I realise this is turning into quite the issue for most counties. What about Nudie Hughes? Is he on yours as well, Grania?
Yeah, like Shane, I had a huge toss between Conor McManus and Nudie. I mean, Conor McManus is a phenomenal player, and Nudie Hughes, I think when I was doing my criteria, I was looking at nostalgia then again, and I think for Nudie, he's just been a phenomenal player. Shane has outlined everything that he's achieved, but he has a huge love for his club with Castleblaney, but actually maybe not many people know, but he actually won 4 hurling medals with Castleblaney Hurling Club as well, so he's played hurling and football for his club, Castleblaney Fogs. But I mean, I think for him, like Conor McManus, he's a big day game player. So when you need someone to perform on your biggest day, he performs. As Shane mentioned there in that Ulster final against Tyrone, he performed. He got 1-3 on that day and Man of the Match award. He's performed for his club. He's won Ulster club titles. And I think what really strikes Nudie out as well, he's a really positive, really energetic person. When you meet him, he'll just, like Brenda, just lives and breathes Monaghan football. And a lot of players sometimes when they finish playing, that's it, they don't get back involved, or they kind of remove themselves from it. Like, he's just so passionate about Monaghan football, and just you speak to anyone about him and he's a character. Like, people love characters in the games. He's plenty to say. He's full of confidence in his own ability, and passes on his knowledge as well. So I personally love meeting him at all the matches, because he always has words of wisdom, words of advice, but you can just see what playing for Monaghan means to him. So for me, definitely he will be in Mount Rushmore, because he won 3 All-Stars as well in 3 different positions. Shane has mentioned all this. So I think, in 2 different positions, but I think he definitely deserves a place on Mount Rushmore for what he has achieved. And again, it's still bringing very much back into the game of Monaghan too.
Yeah, okay, so we've got, go on, yeah.
I think we're approaching a Matt Connor situation here, folks. I really do. I think like Matt Connor being left out as Offaly's most talented ever footballer was a big deal. Conor McManus is Monaghan's most talented ever footballer, and he's been left off here. I think there's going to be a bit of blowback. I think the 3 All-Stars, obviously, it's tight. Nudie Hughes is an absolute icon. It's tight. They both are 3 All-Stars, and in fairness, Hughes does edge him with an extra Ulster title. But Conor McManus has 2 Ulster titles in an era when Tyrone have won an All-Ireland, when Donegal have won an All-Ireland. This is extremely competitive. There was not a single Ulster All-Ireland winner during Eugene Hughes' career, except, of course, until Down in 91, which was his last year. So I think McManus's achievements have to be put into that context, and also existing while the Dubs are going on their 5 in a row, and when he gets the All-Ireland Championship, probably knowing that there's probably going to be defeat in sight, because Dublin are so far ahead of everybody else. So for us to be holding up a Monaghan footballer during this era as one of the best footballers in the country, I think speaks to the outrageous talent that he has. And I really think we're approaching a Matt Connor sort of level of controversy here today by not including McManus.
Yeah, look, I expected a bit of blowback on this one, but I actually expected more blowback on a couple of the others. We have other people from many years ago. The first Liverpool manager was from Monaghan, Honest John McKenna from Glasgow. There's loads of other characters as well, Olympians and that sort of thing. But McManus, look, he's well deserving of it. You're in the danger then of putting too many Gaelic footballers on the team. You can't really leave out either one of Jenny Gregan or Brendan McInnesby. You have to have someone from that All-Ireland winning, double-winning ladies team. Look, McManus is fantastic. He's a Clontibbert legend as well, and he's done so much for football in this county, and he's still doing it to this day as well. But it's hard to argue against Nudie Hughes if you watch some old videos of him. I mean, McManus is an extraordinary talent, and someone who will continue to do great things for Monaghan for the next couple of years, hopefully. But I don't know.
This is Owen trying to build up some fake controversy, like with his contention that Kerry were the team of the decade that's coming up in about 10 minutes' time. Courtney, that's great. You were the voice of reason in all of this, and certainly Shane has accepted who should be on it. So our final 4: Tommy Bowe, Tommy Bowe, not Brian McGuigan, Tommy.
Not a Tyrone.
Brendan McInnesby, Nudie Hughes, and Barry McGuigan. And Tommy Bowe. So it's our own Tommy Rooney, who is obsessed with Brian McGuigan. He's his favourite footballer, and he's been thinking about him non-stop for about a week here, and he's accidentally put him on Monaghan's Mount Rushmore. So thanks to everybody for giving us the true Mount Rushmore from Monaghan this morning. Shane and Gronie, thanks a million for joining us, and congratulations on selecting a very good and non-controversial Final Four. Tommy Bowe, Barry McGuigan, Brendan McAnespie and Nudie Hughes. Thanks, folks. With per capita engraved in stone underneath it as well. What about the McKenna brothers and McManus to change it down the line? That's all a possibility. We'll come back to that at some point. But now let's move on, because over the coming days and weeks we're going to be talking to sports people the length and breadth of Ireland and simply asking, how's the head? We're going to be hearing how they're coping during the crisis, what they're doing to keep their mental health in order, and to find out what advice they found useful from their sporting careers that served them well during this stressful time. We'd love to hear how you're getting on as well. What's keeping you sane? What's got you through the last few weeks? You can WhatsApp Off the Ball on 087 9180 180 or use the hashtag How's the Head. Here's Awfully Camogie star Michaela Morgan.
I'm actually quite busy with, I suppose, I'm teaching online at the minute, so that's kind of a new task in itself. So I'm busy with that, and I'm training away, and I'm doing a lot of baking and stuff. So I'm keeping myself very busy. So I'm doing well so far, but maybe come back to me in a couple of weeks, I might have a different answer. I wasn't too bad, but I have the time now to focus a little bit more. I was a one-trick pony there for a while, but I'm doing a few bits of other things now. So yeah, my skills are growing. So we have a program for a home gym program. So I'm doing that and still getting a bit of running in, obviously within the 2K, but it's actually quite easy to keep your fitness up. I know you can't, without the weights and stuff, it's hard to keep the strength training going, but I'm doing lots of pucking as well, and I'm living with Sean, so we're lucky that we can do it together. We can puck around together and still train together, so that helps as well. It's like going back to your youth, you're just out the backyard pucking around, and you don't have anywhere to be. It's actually kind of nice, you're going training all the time, when a few weeks ago you don't have a second, but now you actually have the time just to go out and have a few pucks without anything on your mind. You're not pucking to speed up, or you don't have an agenda, you're just going out to have a few pucks, which is nice. It's a bit more relaxing. Things are going well with Offaly. We've new management, and there's a really good atmosphere. And I think we had some really good performances in the league. Now, on paper it wasn't a very good league, but it was some really good performances. So overall it was going well. So I am missing it in that sense, but it's very busy. Everybody's always so busy, and it's nice just to stop for a little while and take the break. But I'm missing seeing the girls, and we're really enjoying it this year. So the sooner we get back, the better. I actually have been baking and just training away, and we started watching The Godfather of Harlem, which is keeping us busy as well. But other than that, that's all we've been doing. So what I do, I make a list every night for the next day. And I get great satisfaction with ticking off the list at the end of the day. So just make a list on, I suppose, planning for school and planning my training and just enjoying the free time that you do have now. I think that's important as well. It's nice to be able to just relax a little bit and enjoy that free time that we have.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball.
When he wants to do something, he does it. A hugely impressive person, apart from being obviously a brilliant golfer.
My cousins disliked their dog so intensely that they renamed it Scalacci.
Yeah.
And the dog was called Scalacci from then on.
It's a great piece of journalism. That sums up what he's like. The intro to this is just brilliant. He is an absolute control freak.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on Off the Ball.
OTB AM.
Are we getting to moment of the match?
Yeah, let's do it. What else have you got in moment of the match? Like, we've gone through Canovan's goal, Gooch, and him going down early in the first half. What else have you got?
Okay. My moment of the match, right? Like, initially I had been thinking it might be that 90-second montage at the start of the game with all the hits, because that seemed to sum up the intensity. But my moment of the match, Jerry mentioned it already, was Peter Canovan's point after 58 minutes. Because the game swayed there in the moments beforehand. Darragh O'Shea, who we had mentioned, kicked an iconic, I think it was Darragh O'Shea, kicked an iconic point. And the next camera shot is Mickey Hart lining up Peter Canavan to come on. 2 minutes later, Peter Canavan comes on, in the 54th minute. And what's the next thing that happens? Tomas O'Shea roofs the ball into the back of the net. Back to a 1-point game. Kick out comes out, and Darragh O'Shea has a chance to level the game. He's to the right of the goals, and he drops it wide. It's a poor wide. Now, I actually think Darragh O'Shea had a really good game in that game. And in terms of like bossing in midfield, I haven't really seen a player like Darragh O'Shea do what he did in that game in a long time. He was a man out there. He completely dominated. Sean Kavanagh was very quiet. Enda McGinley, I thought, had a good game. Sean Kavanagh was quiet in the first half, but Enda McGinley had a good game, but he was taken off. He was moved out of midfield as well. Like, I honestly think Darragh O'Shea had a great game. And if O'Shea had nailed that point, it was a draw game. It was a draw match with 15 minutes to go. But he puts it wide. And it goes up the pitch. And Tyrone run the field. Pascal McConnell kicks it out, runs the field. Stephen O'Neill gets bottled up, and he throws it back to Peter Canavan. And you have to watch this a couple of times. It's a shot over the shoulder. It's the angle where you see that he's actually 8 yards out from goal. And the ball arcs towards the post, and he curls it. And Seamus Moynihan is waving frantically that it's wide. You're saying he can see the future. Maybe if there was Hawkeye, it would have been a wide. Because I still can't tell. I'm looking at it right now, and I still can't tell. It's rolling here in front of me. I can't tell whether or not that ball went over the bar. But for me, moment of the match, winning the 2005 All-Ireland final, that's the moment that defines a decade of Gaelic football.
It doesn't make a difference in my eyes. I think that's definitely wide. Tyrone were going to find a way to win this game, I think. They, as much as it pains me to say it, I think Tyrone were always going to find a way.
I don't know. That's you giving yourself comfort there. That's like, oh, sure, look, best team won. Let's not think too much.
I think it's a cop-out. I think Kerry bottled this game, lads. I think Kerry bottled this game on numerous occasions, honestly. And I'm not saying, like, bottle is a word that gets thrown around a lot. I genuinely think, Canavan's 6 or 7 yards out there when he curls that over. But, like, Kerry bottled this game. They absolutely bottled it.
Bottled it in the preparation or bottled it in...
No, forget about the preparation. You've made a great point about the arrogance and the legacy issues of Pascal Bland's comments. That's all well and good. They bottled this All-Ireland final. Like, whether it's Gooch saying the lack of anger, Kerry had numerous chances to win this All-Ireland final. Both teams are at their absolute peak here. They're at their peak in the decade in 2005. And Kerry could have easily won this All-Ireland final on a number of occasions.
I think Kerry could have been at their peak this year is what I would say with that comment about bottling, actually, which is what I would say, that if you were going to question something seriously, it is the preparation. And it's actually one of your own points about Donaghy. Like, I think Donaghy is part of the peak of Kerry in that decade, and he was available but not used in that particular year, perhaps because they didn't feel they needed to use him because they went through the front door because they were All-Ireland champions. Like, they turned to Donaghy in a time of need, and that was when they got the best out of this management. That's when Jack O'Connor was at his best, when his back was up against the wall, as it was early in 2006. So I think that's where it fell down. But I hear you. I definitely do. It's such a hard thing to put your finger on it, and whether or not you can actually call that bottling, as in, like, given the conditions that were there, given the game plan that they were given, and the preparation they'd done until that point, they go out that day. Do they choke? Maybe.
Maybe. Hearts after playing this party trick. Hearts after bringing off Peter Canavan at half time. He has, as you said, all anyone talked about in the second half was Peter Canavan. He'd scored that goal. Like, you guys are questioning what's going on here. He scored his goal before half time. All anyone's talking about for the first 18 minutes is, why has he brought off Hart? Or why has he brought off Canavan? Is he going to come back on? He brings it back on. Tomás O'Shea buries the goal. A point in it. Darragh has a chance to level it. He has a chance to level it. And somehow he misses. And somehow Kerry allowed Tyrone to squirm their way up the field. And for Peter Canavan to, I don't know how he puts that ball over the bar, but that's the winning of that All-Ireland final.
We watched this on the TG-Car replay, but there was no score and there was no time. So how long? So I watched the second half going. How long's left? What's the score?
So it is 23 minutes into the second half here. So there's 12 minutes to go.
When Canavan scores that point.
Yeah, so it's 58 minutes roughly.
What was very weird, I thought, and quite pronounced when they're behind, is that Kerry become a jazz ensemble where a couple of lads are working together, as opposed to, here's our plan of action here. So we just did Gladiator with Dermot Kennedy last week, and when they're all back in, when they finally make it to Rome, Maximus says, was anybody in the army? Let's form a proper phalanx here and be organized. There was no sense of organization about what Kerry were trying to do. There was no Maximus. It was Darragh on his own. It was Tomás on his own. It was Declan on his own. And they were getting overwhelmed by the swarm of the opposition's team. I thought that was quite pronounced in the second half from way early on. So you're saying 58 minutes when that's like for the last 12 plus, I don't know, there might have been no stoppage time. There probably wasn't. Maybe 2 minutes if you're lucky for an All-Ireland final, an extra bonus 3. there was no sense that, okay, well, let's work the ball to Gooch and try and do something. Even when Mike Frank Russell drops the ball in with the last kick of the game it's like, what are you trying to do here, lads? How are you trying to fashion an opportunity? It was too random, and certainly, I mean, if they had Donny on the bench, it's madness not to use him.
I think that there is a case to be made for that exact point, but also for the first half. I think that was symptomatic of Kerry throughout the entire game. I think it summed up, to go back to my moment of the match, Canavan's goal, by the fact that that is Owen Mulligan's goal as much as it is Peter Canavan's piece of magic dust. Who was marking Owen Mulligan? Paul Galvin.
And, that didn't make any sense.
Wow.
That I think sums up where Kerry were at in terms of reacting to Tyrone at that moment. They just found themselves at 6s and 7s at too many vital moments, and it was the moment of the match which you find you have your wing forward on one of the most explosive forwards in the game at the moment, who sets up Peter Canavan for an outrageous finish. So it's obviously not Galvin's fault. It's where was your full back line? Where was the covering? What was the plan that ended up in Paul Galvin marking Owen Mulligan?
Yeah, and who's Mark Canavan? Like, how does he lose you on that run to the point where it's actually Galvin who is the one who marks Mulligan and then has to leave Mulligan and go and chase him to try and do a full-length diving save?
Like, we wax lyrical about the Dubs and their running lines and their backdoor cuts, and rightly so. And Kieran Kilkenny hand passing the ball to Conor Cannon and Paul Mannion stands out in memory. But when you pause this, where Mulligan has his hands on the ball and Canavan makes that cut, it's just poetry. It's unbelievable.
We should talk about our secret man of the match. I can't remember who actually
is the actual.
I'm actually trying to. Was it like Stephen O'Neill was obviously Footballer of the Year, but I don't think he was man of the match in this occasion. Like, I presume Peter Canavan would have been man of the match given the vital scores and given the narrative around him, maybe.
I don't know.
I got like McGuigan, Enda McGinley, and Ryan McMenamin would have been the three that I would have picked out here. As like, obviously McGinley gets taken off, so it's between McGuigan and McMenamin outside of Canavan for me for secret man of the match.
Is this the year that McGinley plays with the broken neck? Is it this year, or is it 03 where he gets his vertebrae broken early on and Peter Canavan is over in his face going, get up, don't show them you're in pain, don't show them you're in pain.
Peter Canavan, well, that definitely wouldn't have been 08 anyway.
No, so that rules that out. So it's either this one or
I think that was 2003. I think it was 2003.
Okay. All right. Well, I was going to say he played pretty well for somebody with
the 2005 All Ireland final man of the match was Muggsy, Owen Mulligan.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Owen Mulligan. Yeah, he had a good game. He kicked.
Good game.
Beautiful point. He had a good game. Definitely a good game.
A couple of bad wides. Didn't he have a couple of bads?
He definitely had one or two bad ones.
You had a bad wide. He had a bad wide.
McGuigan.
O'Neill had a bad wide.
Unbelievable goal chance.
The goal chance comes off that's the one that the build up to that.
Brian McGuigan or Brian Mulligan's or Owen Mulligan's?
McGuigan's goal chance comes off the incredible bit of skill from.
That's 17. That's 17 minutes in, and how, like, do you remember Stephen O'Brien's goal chance for Kerry against Dublin last year?
The save.
Oh yes.
The save.
Yeah.
And if you pause that, and it might be harsh pausing these moments, but like, Stephen O'Brien buries that straight down the middle of Stephen Cluxton, and he has so much room to slot it to Cluxton's left. Once again here, Brian McGuigan is coming in, and I wouldn't question a man of Brian McGuigan's talents, but I don't understand how he didn't open his body and slot it into the corner. He tried to bury it into an angle that wasn't there at the near post. For me, Brian McGuigan's my secret man of the match. He kicked 3 points. He controlled the game. He was a conductor. Like, the narrative this year, he had what? The head taken off him. Yeah, he got a yellow card with about 10 minutes to go.
I couldn't see it.
It was kind of dragging a man back. It would probably be a soft black card nowadays, but he got a good yellow card with 10 minutes to go. His 3 points were just, they were delicious. They were like, his first one, he has a ball and there's 2 men in him, and he doesn't even sell a dummy. He just steps to the right slightly. It's like a half step to the right, turns to the left and slots it over. His second score is immediately after Canavan's goal before half time, just as important. Like, Stephen O'Neill was magic. Dooher was great. Philly Jordan was superb. But there's times in that second half where Brian McGuigan is just like Kieran Kilkenny, perhaps. Say it's 50 yards from goal and he's just passing left and right, and he's just pulling the strings. And like, the narrative this year was that Tyrone, if they got McShane back from Australia, and if they got Conor McKenna back from Australia, they might be contenders for the All-Ireland this year. But back then, if Tyrone had not brought Brian McGuigan home from Australia, if he hadn't decided to, as he wrote it off the ball, to leave his girlfriend behind for a couple of months in Australia and leave Kevin Hughes behind and come home to Ireland, Tyrone would not have been the team of the decade, and they would not have won that All-Ireland final.
I want to put forward somebody for a secret man of the match, and I hate that I'm about to do this, but I think Mickey Hart has to be secret man of the match on this occasion. This is his Brian Cody 2008 moment. This is the best performance he ever got out of this Tyrone team. This is possibly the best All-Ireland final performance from any team this century, perhaps of the last 25 years, or even since the 90s. It is that good. It is an unbelievable team performance with a game plan that is so flawlessly learned by everybody on the pitch. Magic dust across the pitch. So many talented players, and 90% of them played to their very maximum, I would have thought, on that occasion. I would allow them for an error here or there. I'm not going to include errors in this, but in terms of what they brought, in terms of their intensity and in terms of their commitment and their preparation for the game, close to perfect. The Peter Canavan trick, the most famous because it was one of the most successful tricks ever played in an All-Ireland final. In terms of giving a manager credit for how an All-Ireland was won, I think Mickey Hart deserves as much credit as anybody for any of the All-Irelands we've seen recently for this one. And for me, he's my secret man of the match.
That's a good shout. He was very good. Philip Jordan was sensational. The last point is just like, oh, we're playing keep ball. Hang on a second. Thanks. I thought he was all over the place. Nice little bit of ref, he got me, he killed me. And then I'm okay again. I thought
Philly plays the ball. Philly plays the ball to Muggsy as well for the goal.
Yes, he does. And it's like into that corridor of uncertainty. He was great. Sean Cavan in the second half was good. As you said, in the first half, he was kind of like certainly getting to grips with the game. I thought McGuigan was man of the match, and in my head, certainly back in the day, I don't know why Mulligan. I think Mulligan obviously had scored that goal against Dublin that year, and so I'd be interested to know who picked that. But
let's talk about trending and most jarring moments from the game. So trend stuff that kind of stuck out to me. Anything we watch on this time, we kind of know. We've got the loose / breathable jerseys. You've got brand names like Azuri and O2 up in all the hoardings, which kind of spoke mid-2000s to me. The one thing that really actually does jar with you when you watch this era back is just kickouts. It seems like such an obvious thing, not just from the fact that they're taken halfway up the pitch after every score, but also just how much of a lottery it was. Really, you're picking a side of the pitch. Maybe you're overloading it by one or two bodies, but that is as technical as they got. And it just everything looks really, really aimless.
Very true, and I think that's why Darrell O'Shea was able to dominate the skies in which he did. Can I add one more thing to trending?
Yes.
And let's bring them back. TG Cahard, producers, editors, if you're listening, whoever's running the show in the GA, if you're listening here, reverse angle replays in slow motion.
Yes.
They were absolutely class. They were brilliant. And I don't know what's happened or what way they've tweaked the cameras or the angles. They're not the same anymore. They were so good around that time. I don't know what it is. It's like when you look at a photo in a mirror and it just switches the angle completely or it flips it completely. I don't know what it was, but it was class.
Well, I'm not sure that they actually provide as much as you think. I think they made it look nicer. And maybe on certain occasions, they actually did provide a little bit more. You properly got to see a ball going over the bar and things like that. I'm not sure they actually provide as much, but they're definitely noticeable. They're conspicuous when you see them. Reverse angle.
I like them.
Do you feel like, so this is 2005 and we're now in 2020. Do you feel like we haven't actually progressed that much in terms of what you see on a match day and what you experience as a TV watcher now from then? When you consider, did smartphones exist in 2005? I don't think they did. I'm almost certain that they absolutely didn't.
The iPod was just out, I think, a year or two, wasn't it? That was in the crappy quiz last week.
The iPod, yeah.
The iPod,
yeah. So we're still a bit away from good point of research to do for next round of questions. When you think about it, we should now be seeing way more than we are seeing, right? That didn't feel like it was a game from a different era, and 15 years of extra technology doesn't feel like we've got there yet.
No,
it's true. Is this a reflection on sport in general, or is it a reflection on GAA in general? It does feel that there's more cameras at Premier League grounds, and Premier League is when we were doing the Battle of Highbury in the Classic Game Club a while ago. It did feel that we were deprived of content or deprived of angles. Whereas now, if you watch the Premier League game, it's just ridiculous the depth that they have. Whereas here, kind of feels like a fairly similar television experience. Like reverse angles are different. There's obviously been a dipping of the toe into the water of actually having the little thing appear where you can see the kick out and the replay.
The replays in the corner, TJ Carr's been in that. But you two boys consume a lot of American sports. Like, there obviously is a lot more that can be done.
Yes, yeah, you can have loads more. Like the referee cam in rugby, first couple of seasons they had it, it was like wearing a dead weight, and now it's this tiny little camera that the referee has on them, and you actually, you know, you're getting they kind of went away from that in the last 18 months as well. So, look, I just think that there is way more that we could be seeing. The fact that Hawkeye didn't exist, for example, you know, like, it's great that we do have Hawkeye, so we would now know that Peter Canavan did score that or kick that wide. But I just, you know, I would like to see a quantum leap forward in terms of the stuff that we're getting, because we deserve it. These games are brilliant.
We sure
Can I add one final thing to most jarring? It's a moment that happens, it's maybe the last 5 minutes or so, and I'm pretty sure it's the hill, and I tweeted a photo of it. I don't know whether you boys saw it. I'm just going to flip my camera here. The smoking ban, to my knowledge, was brought in to effect in 2004. This is 2005. Look at the boys there.
I can't see it.
2, 3. Can you see that?
Are they Tyrone boys?
They're Tyrone boys, all 3 or 4 of them. And there's a fellow over here in the corner as well, all having a smoke. Yeah.
No, they don't have to be. There's no chance of them getting or having to pay any fines. What I found most jarring was the Kerry fan in the Michael Jackson mask.
Oh yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
That was freaky and weird. I think by that stage we all knew that Michael Jackson was a paedophile. I'm pretty sure that it was fairly common knowledge at that stage in 2004, 2005. And still to show up and to, like, you know, it's Thriller era Michael Jackson. It was just like, why do you go to an Ireland final and make yourself uncomfortable by wearing this sweaty mask all day? Not a great look.
No, it was before we had smartphones, Ger. Nobody knew anything about anybody else. So I'm going to give that Kerry's fan a free pass. There's also a Tyrone fan that gets, like in the middle of Dooher making a speech, it pans to like some fella who's got a bit of space after the pitch invasion on the pitch, and he's there like lighting up a flare, and the steward walks over to him and is like, "What are you doing?" And the flare is lighting. And the steward is like, "Come on, get out of the stadium." And he's like, "I kind of want to watch and see the speech." And unfortunately, the camera pans away, so we never actually get to see what actually happened to that. Just one final thing before we get into like the final few points, just on the most jarring. This is always a subject we talk about with the passage of time. So when I see Kerry being really naive, that in itself is jarring, because you watch a team from 15 years ago as opposed to how advanced Gaelic football is now. But I think even if you're watching the game in 2005, it is jarring to see two teams in an All-Ireland final with two very different ways of going about a game. Kerry so much off the cuff, Tyrone off the cuff in places, but really with a far more concrete and suitable plan to how they wanted to go about things. That for me jars so much, and it's just hammered home with the passage of time. Right. Final things that we get into here, sliding doors. Where do you want to take this, lads? What do you want to talk about? What changes if Kerry win this game? What does this mean for the wider context of football in the mid-2000s?
What changes if Kerry win this game is they do a 5 in a row. Like, they're the greatest team of all time. That Kerry team were absolutely sensational. Now, what happens if they win that game? Maybe Donaghy doesn't get into the team and they don't end up doing 5 in a row. I don't know. But that's what was up for grabs, was the title of like all-time great team, and Tyrone went in and they seized it. They went and they took it. Kerry were like, "Oh, that might be important to us down the road. Maybe we'll get another chance sometime." Oh shit!
Jerry, you're forgetting one thing. The only thing that was up for grabs in this game was team of the decade, and I'm sorry to hammer that home. I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but if Kerry win that, no matter what happens in the rest of the decade, Kerry your team of the decade.
No, it's not. Even Eugene McGee,
sliding doors.
Even Eugene McGee, who would have liked to stuck the boot into Kerry time and time again during this era, even said in his report after the game that the team of the decade conversation will take some time to actually pan out before we make any assumptions. Now,
I give you a bit of advice. We did a piece last year with Ricey and Kieran Donaghy. Go back and listen to that, and then tell me who's the team of the decade.
In fairness, if I was here with Ricey, I'd also say whatever the hell he wanted to hear, so that I am safe and I can walk out of the pub or wherever you filmed it safely. That's all that matters to me. And I don't actually believe that Donaghy actually fully meant Kerry were not the team of the decade on this occasion. It's 5 All-Irelands to 3. That is one of the important That is, for me, the most important metric for this. Of course. Tyrone versus Kerry rivalry is an important factor, but it is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the be-all and end-all.
Yes, it
is. It is. This is a decade,
it's not the be-all and end-all, but it's 80%. It's 3-0. If it was 1-0 and it was the only game they played was this game, if that was the only time that it happened, you'd be like, look, it was one game, caught Kerry a bit cold, but Kerry won more All-Ireland. It's like, I'm sorry, but that was the best team in the decade, and this was the game where it was up for grabs. Kerry have no qualms. There's no comeback because Kerry went through the front door. Everybody was fit. You had Moynihan still in the team. You had Dara Canage still in the team. You had
Brosnan,
Dara still in the team.
Well,
you can't complain. Tom Sullivan,
there's a lot there. Like, first of all, the whole backdoor notion and like going through the front door being a massive advantage. Kerry themselves have proved that a couple of times that is just a nonsense. That actually going through the front door is the better option, and that Tyrone were this frail, old, past their peak beasts that were there for the taking, and Kerry couldn't even do that. Like, that's just nonsense. That's just not a real argument. I will let you come out with your remaining team of the decade arguments before. I just have a couple of points to make on that, because like we are obviously not going to reach a conclusion. I'm not going to move from my position, and you are not going to move from your position. I accept that.
It's two against one here, Owen. It's
3-0. It's not 2-1.
It's Donaghy. It's 3-0. It's 3-0.
They played each other 3 times in the course of a decade. 10 years.
Oh,
10
in All-Ireland finals. In All-Ireland finals.
Years.
Oh, 3. But like, it's not like
you can't, like it's an important factor, but like, it's 3 occasions. They were spread 5 years apart. Those games, like
3 to 08. It's a final. It spanned the generation. It spanned the whole decade. It spanned the decade. 03 to 08.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was 03, 04, 05. It was 03 to 08.
Like I hear what you're saying, and it is a factor in all of this. But I say what is actually a bigger factor than that is Kerry winning 5 All-Irelands. Kerry getting to winning back-to-back All-Ireland, something Tyrone couldn't do. How can we how can we never a Cork team that beat Cork, or a Cork team that beat Tyrone?
2 against Mayo.
A Mayo team that beat Tyrone. Like, are these teams so pathetic? And they actually beat Tyrone. Like, where does that leave Tyrone if these teams are so pathetic that they actually found themselves in a position where Cork and Mayo actually beat them? Like, this whole notion that Kerry gets slapped down because they beat Mayo and Cork in All-Ireland.
Okay, that's fair.
It's just a little weird with me. Well, how can we never judge? Like, okay, so, sorry, just one thing. I really want to make this point. Whenever it comes to the Tyrone versus Kerry team of the decade argument, people like you will always make the argument about, well, here is how Kerry fell down in this argument. Totally fair. How can we never analyse where Tyrone fell down across the decade?
Well, primarily Tyrone fell down. They came up against that Armagh team, and so their passage to get to play matches against Kerry involved overcoming a very, very, very good team.
Oh, hold on a minute. Can I just challenge that?
Armagh were vastly superior to Cork.
I'm not challenging the Armagh point. I'm not challenging the vastly superior. Not sure. Better team. Give you that.
Vastly superior.
I don't know about that, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, Cork.
How many All-Irelands did Cork win in that decade?
Well, they got to 2 All-Irelands.
Like, I mean, the end.
Like, they got to 2 All-Irelands. They end up getting over the line in 2010, which is actually the product of the 2000s. That is a product of the 2000s Cork team. 2010 is a product of what they do in the years previous. They beat Tyrone in 2009. Tyrone are All-Ireland champions at that point. They get to 2 All-Ireland finals in that time. I think Cork are an absolutely
Tyrone are finished in 2009, I think. I think 2008 is the end of that Tyrone team. I think that's fair.
Well, okay, but we definitely agree on that. But I just want to challenge you on one thing there, where you talk about Armagh being the low ebb for this Tyrone team. That's not true. Like, the low ebb for this,
not the low ebb.
The challenge.
As in the challenge. So they have to overcome that challenge. I didn't say low ebb.
Okay, so let's analyse the low ebbs of this decade for Tyrone. Like, scoring 6 points against Laois in 2006 when you're All-Ireland champions. One of the most pathetic defences of an All-Ireland title that there's ever been. Like, at that point, 2006, it's like, all right, we're the best team in the country. Time to defend our title. Let's do it. 6 points they score against Laois. Knocked out of the championship on their backs. Their arses are up against the wall. Come back the next year, they're back. Tyrone are going to be back. Come up against Meath. No offence, Tommy, in an All-Ireland quarter-final. Meath beat them.
Hey.
Okay, I'll accept it. We're low points for Kerry in this decade. Meath in 2001 was their low point, without question. Outside of that, 08 is clearly the second moment throughout this decade. But you've got the first All-Ireland of the decade, the last All-Ireland of the decade. You've got a back-to-back in the middle. Tyrone, an unbelievable team. And yes, this is a debate. Of course it's a debate. I'm not saying it's not a debate. But I just think because of what Kerry achieved and because of the lows that Tyrone stumbled upon, Kerry edged this debate.
Can I just say, like, you've made a compelling argument, and I've heard it a lot. I've sit beside you in the office when we're in the office together. I've heard it before. But let me just say one thing. If this is all going to be factored into the debate about team of the decade, another thing that has to come into it is the context of the county themselves and how the county themselves view themselves. How do the county themselves stand amongst history? Like, when we talk about the Mount Rushmores, we're leaving it up for debate for each county to decide upon who is on it. So Mayo, for example, have folk heroes. Dublin want to split them in four. Cork have all their legends as well. But when it comes down to it, what did Tyrone have before these minor winning teams in the 90s? What did Tyrone have to say that's where we want to get to? That's what we want to aspire to. I remember reading a couple of the autobiographies back then and being struck by the underdog nature of that story. And for me, when you talk about the low points from Tyrone, that just shows how human they were as a team. I'm getting a call here, sorry. That just shows how human they were as a team. Kicking 6 points against Laois, I understand that. I can see how that can happen to a team. Like, in 2005, Kevin Hughes had left. Brian McGuigan had gone. Like, they didn't hang around. They had their lives. They'd won their All-Ireland. They were top of the world. It didn't matter. Like, they were dealt with that devastating blow of Cormac McAnallen in 2004. Like, the whole story of the decade isn't how many All-Irelands. Like, the numbers matter. The numbers matter. But it's the narrative. It's the story. It's the fact that Kerry, when they had it in 2005 on, they had the chance to do it. This was not a debate. If Tyrone had 2 All-Irelands, it's not a debate. And Kerry had the chance to squash Tyrone that day, and they didn't. They let it go because Tyrone had something on them. Tyrone had their mark, and Mickey Hart had their mark.
On those occasions, 100%, Tommy, couldn't agree. And in fairness, it is a huge factor. Like, I'm not saying you brush off the championship meetings that they had with one another, but there are other factors at play. There are significant other factors at play. What I will say is that, of course, that Tyrone team within their own county will be more revered than this Kerry team will be remembered in their own county because of the competition they've had from other decades, for example. But if you're comparing one team with the other, boy, what a brilliant collection of players they both were. I just think Kerry just edges it just about. And like, this was a debate.
On what basis?
This more All-Irelands.
And that's all that matters.
No, doing back-to-back All-Irelands, actually having sustained greatness from the start of the decade to the end of the decade. Tyrone,
you do accept that the Munster Championship is complete bullshit versus the Ulster Championship, right? So already it's more difficult to win coming from their province. They're already handicapped. Like, so the value of an All-Ireland coming through Ulster, it's actually more difficult. Just like by any metric, subjectively or objectively, it is more difficult to win All-Irelands coming from Ulster because of the way the Football Championship is completely irrationally organised as a result of how the Brits decided the county system was going to be and whatever the provincial lands that Maeve stole when she got the Brown Bull. I don't even remember. I don't even know the mythology around it. But for whatever reason, it's much more difficult to be an Ulster county and win these. And as Tommy says, rightly, this is their first ever All-Ireland. That means that's a so much more difficult thing for them to do. Coming into the decades, you already had a team that was festooned with All-Ireland winners, backboning the Kerry team. So,
and you know what? Maybe a greater cause, sure. Maybe a greater cause. You know, like, actually, that explains why Tyrone were always at it a lot more than Kerry were in their big occasions. A much bigger cause. It's like, right, we've got up to the hill once. Let's prove to everybody this was not a fluke. That's the cause they had in 2005. Whereas Kerry, it was like, let's prove to everybody why we're actually the best team in Ireland and we're the best footballers in Ireland. Like, they're two very different causes. There is a lot more determination that can come from the Tyrone cause, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I would say that that's a significant failing from Kerry. It goes back to Gooch saying we couldn't match that. We weren't as good a team as this. And how can you as a footballer view your achievements over a period of time to be superior to a rival who beats you every time you play them?
I think if Gooch was to sit down and actually talk about the whole decade as a whole, I don't think he would say that Tyrone were the better team over the course of a full decade or the better county. The team of the decade, I'm not sure would he actually come to that conclusion. I think in 2005 it's indisputable.
Can we go back to the point earlier on when you were talking about Gooch and you said you felt that he must think that they underachieved.
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Well, like I think there's it seems like a bizarre thing to say. 5 All-Irelands in a decade, and to think that there was an underachievement. It's because I really think that the game we've just watched ourselves, I don't think any of the three of us can say that Kerry were as well prepared as their opposite number on that day. They were as well set up. They were as well drilled. And that, for me, no matter who you are, no matter what county you are, that has to give you a lot of regret. That actually we have the talent to go out and, as you say, Ger, put yourself in the ballpark for a 5 in a row. Like, even after this, like that is why 08 is. I'm not ready for 08. First of all, I'm not ready for 08, and I never will be ready for 08. I never will be ready for 08. This is the one that will get you down forever. Like, because for me, 09 is the best Kerry team that we had. It's very similar to 08. It's not too dissimilar to 07 as well. That you have this unbelievable run from 06 to 09.
How did you lose in 2008?
I don't know, Tommy. I don't know.
I don't remember this game.
Genuinely, the longer Owen talks here, I actually think he's talking himself out of actually backing Kerry for team of the decade.
No, that's
Owen, the points you're making there about preparation,
they're excellent.
Like they're really good, but they're actually serving. They're serving the Tyrone cause here.
My point is that Kerry underachieved and still won 5 All-Irelands. That is the mark of the team of the decade for me.
There's such a thing as a soft All-Ireland, and if you combine that with a team as exceptional as Kerry's were talent-wise, talent-wise, but like this Kerry team is very different to this Dublin team.
This whole notion of soft All-Irelands, it's to do with Kerry's utter dominance in All-Ireland finals that has translated into soft All-Ireland. Let's face that here. This is the most outrageously talented team of this decade.
And when they were challenged, they lost. They crumbled. They were brittle.
They didn't have the anger.
That's only in the Tyrone games, really. Like they were challenged by Armagh. They got that revenge. They were challenged by Dublin on a couple of occasions.
They weren't. Armagh beat them in the All-Ireland final. They were 1-8 to a point up against Armagh. They had them on the rack and they got beaten.
So you've shifted the goalpost from like Armagh.
I'm not. You said they beat Armagh. Like
just Armagh.
Okay, so they beat Armagh at some point.
You know, it's like.
I'm actually I'm going to shut up. I'm going to shut up after this, right? But a little earlier, about probably 2 hours ago, Owen made a wonderful point about arrogance after 03 and how Kerry didn't learn from their mistakes. Can I just make one recommendation for people of Kerry? Take that decade, the 2000s, and put it in 2003 as an example. So why don't you just learn from the 2000s and perhaps now
5 All-Ireland, terrible
the 2020s, the 2020. But listen, you had your 32 in 2003 and you didn't follow it up in 2005 because you didn't learn from the mistakes. Learn from the mistakes of the noughties and be team of the decade in the 2020s. That's what I'm saying. You're not learning from your mistakes. You're bringing that arrogance into the debate here again. You're not learning from it.
I would actually challenge that completely, Tommy. I would actually say that Kerry went from being the best team in the country, clinging on to the legends of that era, to the point of 2012 when Jim McGuinness comes along and beats them deservedly, and all of a sudden Kerry find themselves in a position where they're like, oh crap, we've got to find new talent pretty quickly here. And they managed to annex an All-Ireland in 2014, which is a very un-Kerry. Like, if you're making the point about the 2000s that Kerry had to be by far the best team in the country to win the All-Ireland, they weren't the best team. They weren't perhaps in the top 2 teams in 2014 and managed to win an All-Ireland. I would contend that they have learned from their mistakes already.
That's fair.
And they've just happened to come up against possibly the best team of all time over the last 5 years.
One last point, and I'm going to leave it to Gooch on this. Whatever the second extract you read out, another example.
Oh, Jerry, we appear to have lost Ger there.
I wonder has his battery died.
It possibly has. I will actually read out the last passage of Gooch here because it's a point that he wanted to touch on somewhere here. Canavan scored a class goal. He talks about. Oh, Jerry, you're back.
Yes, I'm back.
Sorry, you were about to make a point there from Gooch's extract. What were you going to say?
Yeah, what was the line he said about another way of Tyrone leading the thinking or being ahead of the game?
So he talks about Hart taking Canavan off before sending him on again. More evidence of how they were rethinking the game. We ended up chasing the game in the dying seconds, and that's your point, is it?
Sure, look, Tyrone rethought the game, but Kerry were the team of the decades and lost every game they played against.
Well, Jim McGuinness completely changed the game. So is he Donegal automatically the team of the 2010s?
I mean, there's a case to be made for that. That's not the argument we currently have.
That's a conversation for another day, boys.
Right. Okay.
We're a long way into this. We got to do over.
I think the Dubs are probably.
This is underrated for me. Underrated as a game. I think as a Tyrone team. I think like. What do you mean? Well, I think that as a team they're perfectly rated, but I think as a game this is underrated.
I think as an All-Ireland final this is perfectly rated. It defines a generation of football. It's got the perfect quality of bite, the perfect mixture of bite and quality, and there's two teams at the height of their power, and it gives us the answer to the question we've all been looking for. Jared.
I think this Tyrone team might be underrated. They may actually be as important a team in the history of Gaelic football as any other Gaelic football team. From that population base to win 3 All-Irelands, to get to the point where they've come from nothing to make everybody, including Kerry, think that they don't even understand how the game is being played or evolving, is like a seismic explosion. And when you think about it, we're watching an All-Ireland final, and we just watched one when we did the Galway-Kildare game, where it's 2 brilliant teams and one of them isn't Dublin. Like, it's going to be a very long time before we see an All-Ireland final with 2 brilliant teams, 2 generational teams up against each other, and one of them not be Dublin. So, absolutely sensational. I would recommend everybody go back and watch it, and absolutely Tyrone are the team of the decade.
It's been a very unpleasant experience watching this game back. It's been even worse chatting with the two of you. You've been terrible company, but I hope you at home enjoyed this. This is the Classic Game Club. Cheers, lads.
Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start talking about how business is going to respond to the impacts of the current crisis that we're currently ongoing. And I'm delighted to say our first guest to that end is Jonathan Courtenay, Managing Director of Jack Sports and Top Line Sports. You're going to know them out there as the brands Umbro, New Era, BLK, and this is the company that distributes them in Ireland. That also has looked after the Ireland shirt for decades at this stage. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you guys?
It seems a bit weird to be talking about business, so we should talk about the crisis first, because I think everybody kind of feels like they need to get that out of the way. How has lockdown been treating you? What have you been getting up to?
Yeah, I suppose like everybody else, we're feeling that whole new world thing going on, and it's our place is effectively closed down. We do have 2 people. We've an allowance of 2 people to go in every day, and that's really to keep our online business ticking over, because obviously all retail is closed down and sport is effectively off. So all of our reps are out working from home and trying to build up contacts and do stuff that they wouldn't normally have the time to do on a regular basis. So really it's everything has moved online, and we're just trying to support our League of Ireland teams in particular on that, because we would host the likes of the online pieces or the online stores, I should say, for the likes of Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk and Shells and Pats and Bray, all the teams that we look after, Waterford, Drogheda, etc. So we're trying to do that service, but things are difficult, I suppose, the same as they are for everybody.
Everybody's looking for silver linings in this, and one of the silver linings is that it's going to accelerate some parts of business that probably should have been online years ago and that haven't been online. Is there any aspect of this in terms of the sportswear and the distribution that when this is all over and we all come out the other side of it, that you're going to go, actually, you know what, that's a better way of doing business?
I guess it's showing that more and more people are willing to go online who possibly don't already shop online. And that's true, I suppose, force rather than, or necessity rather than having loads of options at the moment. It might be detrimental to more retailers. I think everybody saw that Debenhams basically went into administration and stuff the other day. And I think that there will be more fallout on the retail side of things. But I think the pattern, if you like, of a lot of business moving online will just really ramp up. I think people will get more used to it. Maybe a different generation, slightly older people who don't regularly shop online, be doing it now probably out of boredom more than anything else, but I think it will certainly give the high street more challenges going forward.
Yeah, it's definitely going to result in a completely different look and feel to our city centres, and how we as a society deal with that is going to be a big challenge into the next couple of years. What do you think is going to happen with the relationship between big clubs and big teams and big sports franchises and their sportswear providers? Will, for example, the GAA's season ticket had the word pandemic in its terms and conditions, and Wimbledon obviously had a massive insurance policy on the basis that there might be a global pandemic. So I'm sure in the clauses that the big clubs have with their big sportswear brands, there's all sorts of ways to deal with a scenario like this. But will contracts just roll, or are we going to see things move forward?
Yeah, I think that will be all on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the relationship that the brands have with that particular club or association. I think that it will all come down to, depending on the size of the club and the size of the deal that you're talking about. If it's, I don't know, if it's Manchester United or Liverpool or something, obviously the contracts that they would have would be obviously deeply legal, and there would be a lot of black and white stuff in there. But I think there probably has to be a realization that this is something that nobody has really experienced before. There's been nothing like this in terms of global pandemic for over 100 years. So, the legal contracts and contracts in general across sports and lots of other things have moved on immeasurably from the last time this would have happened. So there's got to be a realization from both sides that, nobody planned this. This came along. There has to be some level of fairness. But I think lawyers make their money in those kind of areas. So I think the lawyers will probably do well. I know, for example, one of the brands we look after, New Balance, the contract with Liverpool is ending, for example. And Nike are taking that contract over. And they said a few months ago, or a month or so ago, that they understood that the league would probably be suspended and then, run later than usual. And they expected to let New Balance, Liverpool, I should say, lift the trophy if they win the Premier League, as they probably will, in New Balance kit. But how long that good grace lasts for, I don't know, because if that contract is meant to start on the 1st of June and the Premier League season runs into August, and that's then affecting maybe Nike's launch plans for the next kit, I don't know where the good grace stops and the legals kick in. And as I said, I think that's very much a case-by-case, relationship-based conversation for everybody.
I didn't realise that. I mean, when you think about it, like Liverpool lifting the trophy is a fairly iconic moment for any of the sportswear brands. And, you'd like to have that on your third or fourth day out, your third or fourth match day out. Yeah. If you were Nike with the new kit and your New Balance, you've invested all this money, you want the money shot at the end of it. That's exactly
what happens. So, that conversation is ongoing. I don't know exactly how long it will take, nor does anybody, for football to come back or sport to come back in general. But brands like to have these iconic moments, as you say. So to lose after having that sponsorship for 10 years or so, and the crowning moment of it, ironically, is at the end of a championship season that Liverpool will probably win, and the brand like to have that in their portfolio and their imagery and all that sort of stuff. So there's all these sort of weird little quick quirks and kinks in particularly when one relationship is ending, one sponsorship is ending and a new brand is kicking in, and because all dates are effectively movable at the moment, and that's a situation that nobody has ever really been in before.
How much innovation have we started to see from some of these brands who have specific relationships with individual athletes? Because you'd imagine that with social media, it's pretty possible for Paul Pogba to go onto Instagram and wear his goods, whatever. I can't even remember what his association is, and get that out online. He doesn't necessarily need to be on the football pitch to actually put forward his endorsements, for example. I presume the innovation on that level has gone to a whole new level over the last couple of weeks.
I think that's actually treading a line at the moment, because I think there's a view towards, if you're promoting stuff too much at the moment, I think that can be seen as very cynical, and you're trying to take advantage of a situation. I think, for example, a couple of brands who early days in the crisis effectively offered up either, whether it was free goods or discounted goods or whatever, to frontline workers, for example. I think that was really good and it was really positive. If you jump on now, 4 or 5 weeks down the line, if people are still doing that, I think it becomes a little bit, me too, I'm jumping on that bandwagon. And it can be seen by the modern consumer as a cynical move. Then it actually can backfire against you. So I think everybody ironically, where there's a bigger audience than ever probably to be captured by using social media, because more people are online and more people have probably a bit of time to be looking at these things. I think people are a bit afraid to put their head above the parapet to see what's going on, because you can quite easily turn what you're trying to do a positive into a very, very negative against your brand.
Definitely. And I think even when it comes to the conversations that we would be having about sport and when it would return, like there is kind of a feeling you almost have about that this is insignificant compared to whatever else is going on in the world, that you can't possibly be discussing the return to sport, when in actual fact that actually plays a fairly important part in how people will enjoy their lives if our current way of life is to maintain itself for the next little while. Like, I wonder, would there be any little bit of sympathy towards these massive conglomerates if it's like, well, there are employees on a base level who would benefit from the fact of us still churning out a bit of income via visibility?
Yeah, look, I think if people strip back and look kind of a step behind the obvious, in terms of if, as you said, if you have a Pogba or something out there pushing his new football boot and he's trying to sell things, yet there's no football on, so the kids aren't going to wear the boots or can't really wear the boots and stuff like that. I think that's the cynical part. I don't mean to be picking on Pogba here just because you mentioned him, but on the other side of things, I think people would realise that there's jobs and there's people's livelihoods behind that. So everybody can't effectively stop for much longer, I suppose. But as you rightly say, I mean, this is a situation that nobody anticipated or foresaw. So we just nearly have to deal with it on a day-by-day basis and just see what tomorrow brings. And hopefully everybody staying at home, as is the message, is having effects. And I think we're still on that kind of upward curve, but I think we've managed it in Ireland a lot better than a lot of other places have.
Are there going to be supply chain issues eventually when this is lifted, or because the globalized market is so big, like they'll be able to shift production from one factory in China to another factory?
I think there will be some lag in orders at the moment for the foreseeable future, because if you think about the chain of events, effectively this started out in the Far East, so it started out in China, and China went into lockdown a lot earlier. So it happened around Chinese New Year, and around Chinese New Year, generally you have most of the workers are rural workers who move to the cities, and they get the jobs in the factories producing sportswear, fashion, whatever it is, phones, obviously everything that's made in China. So around New Year's, Chinese New Year's, they all go home to the country and they have about 2 weeks off. When that happened, they were on the 2 weeks holidays, and generally what happens, and this happens every year, is that each factory will lose about 20 or 25% of its workforce because they just don't decide to come back. So it takes some time for them to reskill people and get them up to speed anyway. Then when you throw on the back that effectively they went into lockdown for anywhere, depending on the region, anywhere between 4 and 10 weeks, you've effectively lost kind of 3 to 4 months of production time there. So a lot of product, and I'll take a general amount of time in sportswear. If we order something today, it takes generally about 6 months to come in from the Far East, from them ordering the fabric to cut and sew to putting it all together, packaging, labeling, and then shipping. It takes about 6 months. So the 6 months effectively can become kind of 9 months. So I think some of the big box retailers who do fashion, the likes of Primark and stuff, I think somebody in there mentioned a while ago that they would have probably empty shelves towards the third quarter of the year because they literally had lost so much time that it would be very hard to pick up. And I think with mostly with retail closed to a huge degree, obviously the product that people had ready to be delivered around now can't really go out because they can't accept deliveries on the same scale that they were accepting before, because their throughput and sellout on the far side is not anything like it was before because people are not out in the streets and walking in and making impulse purchases. So it's a bit of a long answer to your question, but yeah, I think there will be a knock-on effect across numerous businesses and across every aspect of business, actually, in terms of retail.
In a way, the consumer sentiment coming down might actually be mirrored by a lack of stock. So actually, it might not be the worst time for that all to happen, and hopefully confidence returns as the stock starts to come back. And I mean, look, that would be a best case scenario where the start of next year is a good start. Like the IMF issued fairly confident predictions yesterday, saying that they thought next year there would be growth in the economy.
Bounce back.
And yeah, we would all bite your, as Mick McCarthy said, bite your hand off right now for that.
That's it.
Speaking of the situation, you guys have had the Ireland jersey for a long period of time, so you've kind of had a front row seat with what's going on with the FAI. Are you happy with the direction that the FAI are taking at the moment?
Yeah, certainly very happy with the new appointees and the way the new board has formed. I think the likes of Roy Barrett and Gary Owens, Liz Joyce, Catherine Guy, and Niall Quinn, all those guys going in there is only a positive for the association. And I know it's well documented, all the issues and dramas that probably went on over the last year or so. But we were actually in negotiations to renew the contract and extend the contract during that period. So it was a very strange time, and we were kind of dragged into the mixer to some degree with the fact that we were renegotiating. It did become quite a straining point in the negotiations, let's say, but there's been changes, things have moved on, and I obviously have to emphasize the fact that this was very much under previous management. And we're as a company, we have done a new deal with the FAI, which goes out to 2026. We're very, very happy with the deal. We're very happy with the changes that have been made, and we're looking forward to a bright new future both off the field and on the field. And with that, obviously, wishing Stephen Kenny and his team all the best as well.
That was the one thing.
Go on, sorry.
Sorry, Jared. Like that was one of the things anyway that kind of struck me last year was that for people who are commercially involved with the FAI, there was always going to be a new dawn. There was going to be a corner turned, and by extension of that point, an opportunity for people involved on the commercial side. Did you look at it the same way, or was it very much panic stations when we all didn't really know the future of the organisation within the last 12 months?
We took as hard as it is while you're in the middle of a negotiation, we took a very hands-off approach, and we weren't trying to get in under the hood and see what was going on, so to speak. It was a let's see what happens here. I didn't ever truly believe that the association would be allowed to, go bankrupt or disappear or be reformed. I never really thought that was likely. I thought there would have to be some sort of situation found where the FAI would be effectively rescued. I think that Minister Ross at the time didn't help the situation a great degree. I think that he kept beating the drum of a basket case and kept saying the same sound bites effectively over and over and trying to turn it into a political football, if you excuse the pun. And that's what he was trying to do. But I never. It was a difficult one because some of the things that were coming out, and there was new things coming out every week, obviously at the time. So we were finding out stuff third hand, or effectively at the same time that the public were finding things out. But I think that suited us to a degree because we just were able to roll with the punches, and we're a fluid enough organisation that it takes only a couple of us to make our decisions. So we were able to use the fluidity of the situation in terms of our negotiations, and we eventually all got to a very happy happy medium, let's say.
Because the Ireland jersey is very important in Irish sport. Like it's one of those things that we all rally behind. And you can even see it in the language that's being used when they're talking about a green jersey. They're talking about the football team, and they're talking about the rugby team, but mostly they're talking about the football team, and they're talking about Italia 90. Like I don't remember if there was a green jersey in Irish politics before that, but certainly when Charlie I realised the power of sport and shows up in the Champs-Elysees and shows up in Rome in the Olympic Stadium after the Italy game, like there's a real kind of sense, so we can, the green jersey, it's an iconic thing, and you guys make that. So like, it's not nothing, it's not the same as some of your other deals.
Yeah, it's a source of great pride to us as an Irish company to have the FAI contract, and like I had plenty of people trying to lobby me in a way when everything was going south in the FAI. People saying, "Oh, you need to pull out, stop supporting it," and I was like, "No, that doesn't make any sense." It's there's basically two main international sports that we have on this island, and as you said, football and rugby. And to have one of those contracts is with an Irish company is a source of great pride for us and for me. So making a decision to walk away would have been a lot more detrimental, I think, to our business as well, because there obviously has to be business considerations in this as well. But you know, having that deal allows us a certain amount of clout with retailers and negotiations on other things that we have, because there's a knock-on effect down the line. But we certainly never wanted to give up the contract just because there was effectively a change in personnel. Now, you can say it was an overdue change in personnel, and you know, under that regime, the previous regime, not everything was right by a long stretch of the imagination. But from my own point of view, we had signed a deal with the FAI in about 2009, and it was a 10-year deal. And that ran effectively up to 2020. So and then I actually bought the other directors and shareholders out of the company around 2011, 2012. So we were in situ with the FAI for the next 8 or 9 years at that point. So I never really had to jump aboard the train and try and look after everybody. You know, massage egos, tell everybody they're great people. I didn't have to really do that because we were only at the beginning of a long-term contract, and as a result, I was never particularly close. I was friendly in terms of on the away trips that we used to go on as part of the sponsorship and all. You would have probably a meal with the board, and I had relationships with some of those guys so far as I'd see them at the away games. You'd have a drink, but I wasn't meeting any of these guys at home at the weekend or bumping into them for casual meetings or anything like that. So, but the more important thing, as you said, is it's a source of pride thing in having the Irish jersey and having the sponsorship of that. And we've been doing that since 1994. I think with our company, it's possibly, I think it's the third longest international sponsorship with one company in the world. Now we've changed brands within doing that, but it's still with our company. And that's a source of great pride. I think it's only literally Spain and Germany have longer kit agreements at this point. So that's a pretty cool thing that I like to. I can be happy about that, and I'm happy with the extension, as I said.
I did want about the orange jerseys. They've been doing the rounds. Jason McAtee kick was all over Twitter for some reason at the weekend. Who actually had the idea for the orange?
I'll have to take the blame for that one as well. I originally, I used to design all the jerseys. I still do to some degree. I still kind of have a final say and stuff like that. But I don't have enough time to be putting into these things now. But in terms of the orange kit, we wanted to do something different that had never been done before. And, you know, orange, my view on it, whatever the political connotations or whatever else, I don't really look too deeply into that. My simple answer is it's a third of the flag. I think orange is a very cool colour. We've underutilised it over the years. It stands out, looks great. All you have to do is look at the Holland fans at any major competition. It's a great colour. And I decided not just to go orange, but to go fluo orange. So it was very bright, but it was 1996, 97. You know, there was a lot of raving going on. A lot of people were quite happy wearing crazy colours. So I think it was a jersey at the time. I'm not saying I'd never do it again, but I think it has become one of those iconic kits, whether you loved it or whether you hated it.
So we remember hearing stories around the time. They might have been complete bullshit about the IRA somehow getting involved and stealing a truckload of these orange jerseys. Was there any truth in any of that crap that was being told at the time?
No, that's actually a true story. We had at the time it was I can't remember whether it was 96 or 97. I want to veer towards 97, but we had all of our new replica products coming in over a couple of weeks, and then there was designated launch dates. And we actually had the biggest robbery that was of a non-bank or non-jewellery robbery at the time, which was over £1 million. So our accountant was there. Yeah, our accountant was there one night on his own. We had a security hut at the front of the premises, and this guy came up, put a gun to the security hut guy's head, took his jacket, went down, and threw some stones up at the only light that was on in the office. It was about 8 o'clock at night. So he looked like the security guard to all intents and purposes. He said to the accountant opened the window, he said, can you give us the kettle's not working in the hut, can you give us some water for a cup of tea? So he came down to let him in, and 8 of them walked in, and they basically had, it was the INLA, I believe, not the IRA, but they came in, 8 of them. They spent the whole night in the warehouse, spent about 7 or 8 hours there, and they had hijacked 2 40-foots and a 30-foot van. They backed them in, closed the shutters, and they literally spent the whole night stocking up and robbing everything. The ironic thing was that most of the Ireland jerseys had gone out that day because the launch was the following day. So they kind of missed most of them, but they did get some residual stock. But as we always say in our place, we're still looking for the forklift driver to give him a job, because he was that good at doing it on CCTV. He was filling the stuff up. So it is true.
Right. Okay. And did you get it back, or what happened?
No, we didn't. It basically started appearing mostly. It was a mix of product. There was Manchester United product, there was Celtic product, there was Ireland stuff, and it started appearing at basically markets and stuff around Northern Ireland and in Scotland mostly. So everybody would only have dribs and drabs of it, and it went on for a good while. So you can never really reclaim. So in the end, we had the usual back and forward with the insurance companies, and eventually we landed on some sort of agreement, and we just moved on, because you'd have your heart broken trying to get the guards and get the police service in Northern Ireland and the Scottish cops and everything all involved, trying to seize small amounts all the time. So I think a decision was made to just let it go at that point.
Right, Jesus. And was the orange shirt the inspiration, Maria, for the break-in? They were like, they had heard this was the company who was responsible for was that their cover story?
I'm not the inside man. I don't know exactly what the MO was for the robbery, but I think the fact that I can't even remember if we did a pre-launch in terms of we had revealed that there was an orange shirt coming. I don't even know if there was imagery or stuff beforehand. So looking back at it now, but maybe there was rumours and speculation, and it piqued somebody's interest. But I don't think they could have organised to do this maybe within 24 or 48 hours notice. So I think they probably had a plan for this for a while.
Our Zoom meeting is about to cancel here on us, Johnny. So before I let you go, what's your favourite Ireland shirt of all time?
I'm a big fan of the 2016 shirts that we wore at the Euros, the home shirt. I really liked that one. And I liked the second shirt that we did. I remember we beat Croatia 2-0 and Irwin and Roy Keane scored in that game. I really liked that shirt. Now, it was quite graphic and heavy graphic-wise and stuff at the time. But again, sometimes you have to view these things in context of what the designs and what the general fashion trends were at the time. I really liked that one as well. So they'd be two of my favourites. But it's always great working on them, and it's always great kind of knowing what's coming next. You know, it's kind of like a little secret club. There's only a few of us who actually realise what the next stuff is going to be. So hopefully we'll be doing better ones again in the future.
Yeah, and sooner rather than later. We didn't even get into Carlisle, Johnny. We might get you on again sometime soon to go through some of the good stories from that time. But you've been great with your time, Johnny. Best of luck with the business, and hopefully it's back up and we're all out and about and mixing with a bit of social distancing sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time. Look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side, and